Cara, redação e motivação. Olha, não vai que todas as ações são tradução simultânea, de forma que não estava na primária. Não dá. Então, tem a verdade de tirá-lo antes de suas atividades. A programação na casa do segundo pode ser acessada no site casadosegundo.org que aparece a verdade.
Há um bom tempo, realizado outros eventos também em conjunto, mas principalmente o que é mais importante, a gente tem desenvolvido um espaço de diálogo, de construção, desenvolvimento de ideias. E hoje a gente vai dar sequência nesse projeto, nesse espaço de diálogo, mas com alguns focos já mais objetivos. A gente está falando muito sobre o investimento potencial das seguradoras no TFFF. A gente está discutindo mecanismos de facilitar o investimento das seguradoras por outros canais também. Hoje pela manhã foi apresentado aqui um estudo muito interessante pela Caixa e pelo IX, um trabalho conjunto, onde foi analisado toda a parte das empresas de previdência aberta, um estudo muito completo, com uma análise regulatória, uma análise de mercado, uma identificação de obstáculos e de oportunidades que precisam ser superados e podem gerar uma movimentação de recursos no sentido de investimentos sustentáveis. Eu queria dizer da minha vontade, do meu desejo, do meu compromisso de fazer avançar.
To advance this agenda.
Tem um papel grande na sua parte de investimentos. Em outros países, principalmente países desenvolvidos, o setor segurador é um grande investidor em investimentos sustentáveis. E muitas empresas globais atuam no Brasil, também têm buscado fazer esses investimentos aqui, e empresas nacionais também. Há uma grande dificuldade hoje, do ponto de vista da oferta de títulos sustentáveis no mercado brasileiro. Há um problema de taxonomia, ou seja, de identificação do que realmente é ou não é um título sustentável. A gente tem problema de liquidez e tem problema de originação de ativos que se enquadrem dentro de critérios que realmente garantam que sejam investimentos sustentáveis. Mas eu queria reforçar o interesse das seguradoras a superar nesse caminho. O primeiro deles é o fato de que o Brasil tem uma taxa de juros absurdamente alta e que inviabiliza qualquer investimento fora do que são os títulos do Tesouro. Aqui não é fácil compreender que um gestor de investimentos que tem... deixa eu só ligar meu reloginho aqui para eu não perder muito o timing aqui. Um gestor de investimentos que tenha na sua carteira a opção de investir com risco zero, com liquidez diária e com 15% ao ano de retorno, não é fácil convencer esse camarada dele sair disso para fazer qualquer outra coisa.
Even though he can do anything. It's very hard. This is a big obstacle, and we can't close our eyes to that. we can develop mechanisms using treasury, using public banks, in a way that these banks can work together with the treasury as a whiskey box, let's say. So the insurance companies, Duda is here, then they would go into this as well. And they invest on this bond, then this bond goes into the banks, and then from there they transfer into specific investments and projects. Of course, Treasury has the option of doing that indirectly using other banks, other institutions, financing institutions or not, and doing this irrigation as of the Treasury, as from the Treasury, sorry, with this funding. But what I would like you to keep in mind is that there is money. There is a lot of money. The insurance companies have 2.2 trillion reais in their reserves. This money, adequately conducted, can lead to the financing of sustainable projects in Brazil. What we have to guarantee is a correct return, a liquidity which is adequate, and if possible, they have to pay indemnization. So, and a system of guarantees that works well. So we don't have credit analysis, we don't have credit recovery. You can't invest directly on the projects. You have to create this, let's say, this circuit to be able to, for the money to get where it needs to be. First of all, I think it is the launching from TFF is an excellent mechanism. I think it is well structured and sophisticated financially, but at the same time, it's very creative. And our wish here, Maria, to work together so that we can publicize in the insurance sector here in Brazil, in other countries as well, for them to understand the product, for them to understand the operability of that, understand the risks and the returns which are expected. I'm sure we will advance. And there is another question that has to be worked on, which is regulations. It is natural in the market. The regulation of investments in the insurance sector is developed so that it can guarantee the rigidity of the reserves. It's done so that the insurance broker has the least risk possible within its investments. Obviously, the objective is for that investment to be enough to pay for indemnizations. This logic creates penalties when you stay away from treasury bonds. So when I go into a bank bond, I have penalizations in capital. When I go into a private bond, I have an even bigger penalty. So this reduces profitability of those investments. Therefore, we have a regulatory work to check if the regulator can give some sort of incentive in the line of sustainable investment so that insurance brokers can feel stimulated to do this kind of investment. Well, in sum, we have an enormous amount of work to be done ahead of us, but we are committed with that agenda. So I would like you to certainly count on our participation. Okay, once I have said that, I would like to announce a few products that CNseg is concluding and launching here during the COP, and which will help us integrate within the sustainable agenda, sustainability and climate change agenda. I would like to call your attention for the radar of climate events. I believe all of you have received a little summary on your chairs there, on your seats. It is the first report in Brazil that has as a methodology, a well-structured methodology. It does an assessment of the costs of climate events in Brazil and of those costs for the insurance sector. What is the size of the problem that we are facing when we are talking about natural disasters in Brazil? And we have identified between 2022 and 25, 67 events which were meaningful. We defined it as those which will have an impact of over 350 million reais. These 67 events between 22 and 25 resulted in losses estimated in 184 billion reais. And from these 184, only 9% had insurance coverage. So this is the size of our problem. 91% of the losses were not covered by insurances. So we looked very deeply at those 67 main events. And in other countries, these numbers are very different. In North America, for example, 55% of the losses are covered, and in Europe, 44%. Latin America, 13%. So we are a little below the average of Latin America. Probably this is influenced by Mexico. Mexico has an advanced insurance system there. In the insurance sector, in 2024, we paid 7.3 billion reais in indemnizations related to climate events, of a total of 60 billion of indemnizations which were paid for property damage. So within the insurance sector, the impacts of climate events represent 12% of our insurance for damage. So we can't ignore this. Those who have managed any company, you have to know that any line in your budget which has 12% as a number, and it has to be seen by the company CEO. So this is a point that calls our attention. We imagine that, and the numbers proved that we are having this problem. Another number which is alarming and equally concerning is agribusiness. Agribusiness is the sector that is mostly affected by droughts and also by other events which cause losses in harvest and the excess of rain as well in some cases. So until June this year, the agribusiness had losses around 30.4 billion reais. In the last 10 years, to date, this sector had a total loss of 313 billion reais, an average of 30 billion a year in losses in agribusiness. Just to remember, this is a sector which last year had only 6% of coverage in terms of rural insurance for planted areas in Brazil. This year, we will have a drop to -3%. Perhaps we'll stay at 2.5%. The good news is that we had a very interesting dialogue with the Ministry of Agriculture, and the minister is attentive to that, and we work on a new model for rural insurance and announced publicly that for next year, they will have a different model combining the rural insurance and funding, which is subsidized by the government. So the producer that has funding from the government will necessarily need to have an insurance to be able to have access to rural credit. So this will certainly come as a change. And this is not an isolated idea in Brazil. All countries which have a strong insurance system for the rural area, they have done the same. The US has 65% of its planted area covered by insurance. But you see, the producer there, they cannot access any credit funds from the government if they don't have insurance for preservation of areas. They cannot access incentives for training, education, subsidies for agriculture in the US if they are not insured. So this makes the producer have a policy to be able to have access to other things. So Brazil will certainly do something similar. We are hopeful that things will start to change then. We will still have, during COP, the release and launching of 2 tools. First of all, it is the climate risk assessment tool. We will start evaluating flood risks. It will be freely available on our page. People will be able to look at their homes and check what kind of risk they might be running, where it is. We will do a social environment compliance tool as well, so that properties that will have rural insurance are compliant to the legislation, labor laws, environmental laws, and all rules that need to be fulfilled, complied with. And about these tools, that was it. I would like to thank everyone for having come here. The collaboration from all partner, X, Casa do Seguro, that allowed us to be here and supported us to do this initiative. And I hope we have this afternoon a very enriching afternoon in terms of debates and the construction of partnerships to solve these very complex problems that we have to face. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon. Thank you, President Diogo Oliveira, President from CNseg. Now, I call onto the stage for an opening message, Maria Neto, President of Instituto Clima e Sociedade, ICS. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure for ICS to be here collaborating with CNseg. One more collaboration. Okay, so about the pensions this morning, we had a discussion. So we were thinking what is new. Perhaps I will complement the information that we had this morning, the potential for investment that the sector has, and the systems that we can see. Above all, the sector issues of our institute supports the great amount of think tanks, groups, and associations here in Brazil. And we have an important work here. We have, on the one hand, maybe a little bit late in Brazil, we have recognition of how much the climate impacts may actually impact our economy. And maybe we're not yet ready for the resilience that we need in the country. Today, we had the IHLEG report, which is the experts, United Nations experts about international investments. We had the report from the route from Baku to Belém, and one of the themes is how we can precify the integration of risks and climates in the financial sector, and how we can value resilience in a more positive way. I was in another panel this morning, and we were having this discussion about the need to consider the risks in a different way, since we are talking about risks for the future with scenarios that we know will be more frequent, and we are not sure about them, and the way we evaluate them yet. The countries, the organizations are not always integrated do not always integrate that. So it's important for insurances and for all of us to start pricifying these risks and pricify as well positively those investments which are done in a resilient way. So the discussion about insurances is linked to the discussion of prevention of risks. And the understanding of this risk prevention is still something that we are not really we have not really fully developed. So when we talk to the agro sector, we have to think of incentives so that any producer makes an insurance policy when they're going to finance, but we also have to specify that those ones who have a more resilient project should have a better price, and that they should be motivated to avoid the risk, not just subsidize it in case. So it is in this sense that IX has made a great effort. CC Carbon, Agroecony, Swiss Rig, and CNseg, and some other partners who will go in for a deeper discussion of how we understand the good practices for resilience, adaptation, so that this discussion can be more sophisticated. In infrastructure, this is really important. When we design a PPP, we don't integrate that as recurrent. We consider those risks as force majeure. So this creates a problem. Insurance don't participate in most of the business. There is a growing recognition for that. Brazil is a little late. We collaborate with coalition of natural disasters and sustainable infrastructure. It is a coalition in which Brazil is, and which is in India. They have been talking about the good practices of due diligence and ways of recognizing these risks. The app you are developing, okay, Diogo, I think it is important, but I think that is a more ample work, a consensus about how a company or a producer and an insurance and bank classify these risks in the same way, and how can we, let's say, reward resilience, because the cost of inaction and the cost of not being resilient is very high. So this consciousness that insurance is mandatory, not because it's mandatory, but the price can be variable depending on the opportunity that you have. So this is something that I would like to say that insurance can be a positive solution. Many of the investments that we want to scale here, which is necessary to change the way we do business, we need ways of managing risks. In Baku to Belém, there is a chapter there recognizing the role of insurance brokers with solutions. So when we talk about nature-based solution, IX is collaborating with the lab for innovation for nature, new, with different instruments, but that is a legal framework that will probably come from BNDES, which will be a guarantee of performance for restoration, because projects of restorations, they have many uncertainties, and we want them to be scalable. But if I am a producer, maybe I am certain that I can sell coca, macaúba, and carbon credit, but I'm not sure what the price will be. I'm not sure if my area will burn, if there will be a problem in the area where I am. So part of the things that we solved with the guarantee was to cover the performance risk. That may be a way of reducing the collateral demand, because BNDES launched a great credit for 1 billion, but it asks 100% of collateral. And then, okay, we then continue having a problem, but there is also the need of mechanisms that will ensure, because in the first 3 or 4 years of a tree plantation, that is not even considered a commodity. And if it's burned and if it's lost, we all lose. So some provocations are happening here in Brazil. Banco do Brasil created a insurance against forest fires, but we have to do much more. So the opportunity is very big. And we also talk about solutions for forests, solutions for innovation and technology. I talked about infrastructure, but Brazil has a serious problem, which is health. We have heat waves, which have important impacts in terms of health costs, public and private ones. And so we have costs for productivity, for heat waves, lack of water. So we are not ready. We're not yet looking at the opportunities that we need to have. We need to make people aware and once again validating resilience, and perhaps it will then be possible to innovate, to develop innovation. So this is a very expensive agenda for us because Brazil is only now recognizing that we need to be ready to be resilient to the unfortunate case of climate impacts. But doing that demands technical work, management, classification of risks, and on the other hand, it opens an opportunity for a sectorial sector that has to happen in a very orderly way. And here at X, we will collaborate with CNseg to see if we can do this convening, if we can have the spaces for dialogues to bring the different players, because it's no use saying that the government will make insurance mandatory if the producer doesn't want to take insurance and if the bank doesn't want to operate it. So we have to bring people in to have a conversation based on data. I can see Jango at from Adapta Brazil. There are many methodologies which are being done, and we think it's very important and very good that companies are doing this physical risk analysis, because Brazil will start to have to adopt it. But the truth is, if each one uses a different methodology, we won't have the same price. We need to have a pricing system where everyone understands the same risk, the same price. Otherwise, we will have a market imperfection. And so I believe it's really important to have a baseline, which is a state policy, not based on political cycles. For us to have this state policy, we need to have tools so that everyone can use it. So once again, I am very glad with this initiative. It's one more piece of the puzzle, of a big puzzle, but I think it's a fascinating area where we have a lot of potential. Thank you.
Thank you all, Maria Neto, Institute Clima and Sociedade, WICS. The first panel from this afternoon will treat with the reflex of the climate in the sector of insurance. We're going to do this approach in the changes in the climate related to the insurance. We'll focus on new strategies with risk management, price, and mitigation. Will be presented technological solutions and scientific ones to strengthen the resilience on the market and to broaden the protection of the insurers. I invite to the stage Pedro Werneck, Manager of Sustainability from CNseg. Let's receive him with a round of applause, please. Pedro Farmi, from CEO from Pedro Parque, Brazil. Jean Ometo, senior researcher from INPE. Eduardo Larroque, Director from Internal Control, Risks and Conformity from IBRE. Gorete Pereira Paulo, Director from the Research Network from FGV. May you all have a good panel. Good afternoon to all. Welcome. I'm here with a challenge, a panel, and just give them good afternoon. Here are the people here on the panel, on the floor. Thanks for CNseg for the invitation. And on this panel, We're going to focus on the matter of the climate agenda, global climate agenda, and the opportunity for the insurance market. I've been here since the first day of COP. I've participated in a lot of panels. I watched a lot of speeches. I just walked out of from Just Transition Pavilion, walked out of a panel there from the European Union, and the themes are of great opportunity for the industry of insurance, because in all the themes that are being discussed of impacts of the climate change, we identify the area of intersection of opportunities for the insurance companies. But then that's spoken here, the matter of health. So nowadays, the climate change is extreme. They are with a very high frequency compared to before, compared in here in Paraná, it didn't happen, that extreme event in 66 years, the estimate, and now it happened. Now they are happening more frequent and more and stronger. And the risk with health is not only the impact, instant impact with the happening, it stays for a long time because we have impacts on health, physical and mental health issues. And with the loss that people have, material loss, the way of life, and the loss of the ability to recover. It's not something momentary. It's an impact about health that was mentioned by Maria, the matter of heat waves, something that's growing all around the world. And the panel that I participated, they had someone from Finland, and she said, now, for me, anything above 15 degrees Celsius, it's a heat wave. So in Finland, the heat wave, it's whatever, it's over 15 degrees Celsius. But in Brazil is, the other member from the panel said, doesn't have a data. What's a heat wave in Brazil? We don't know the limits. We don't know even we are not aware even of the definition. What is the trigger? From what temperature? We're going to start having impacts over health, about the deaths. These data are not aware, are not known here in Brazil. So it opens a lot of research. We're talking about diseases that are infectious diseases. With less forest, I have a greater probability of having new infections, kind of infections, new agents, and new vectors responsible to spreading this disease. So health is a challenge. So living is a challenge also. So residential insurance, for example, if we see that climate change affects more in people in vulnerable areas, these people are the greatest candidates to social residences that is not so well developed in Brazil. We have a model proposed by researchers in development, social living, the fundamental here, the intervention of fintechs, but the development of the insurance for the renter to have less of a loss from the landlord. So if the worker is going to commute in a shorter time, it will diminish the emissions, so greater sustainability, a greater quality of life, and to make it viable, this model, to make a platform of a connection of the renter and the landlord, we need finance, which is a great challenge, and risk mitigation, like insurance, for example, for related to payments of this rent. Carbon market, we're going to have a panel in CNseg talk about a carbon market next week. One of the elements that's fundamental that it's missing for the development of carbon market in Brazil, it's always the issue of insurance, which can get better to identify the risks in this market to guarantee a better possibility of launching. Insurance for great catastrophes. Insurance for great catastrophes, big catastrophes, it affects rural parts, which is the rural insurance that was mentioned by Joe on the first part. And in Brazil, it's a great challenge, but it's an opportunity. I say that every challenge, if it works, turns into an opportunity. So big catastrophes affects rural insurance, but the urban part also. And once again, a model that we develop, it's insurance for big catastrophes, but it's a package that includes preventive measures from the city. So those cities that practice measures that has a greater resilience on the city, they will pay a less premium for the insurance, and they have a greater access to financing. So this structure in insurance will be put it on blending finance to reuniting, to getting together with investors with a normal return of a little bit lower, and that investor that doesn't want returns that are philanthropics or governments, etc. We know that the governments, they have a estimate that is very limited. The matter of blended finance, it's fundamental for us to make it viable, these opportunities and assurance also. With the budget. To do context on the panel here, and I'll pass to the speakers. Well, let's start with you, Eduardo. Thank you, Boretti. I'd like to start by thanking CNseg, Diogo, Gustavo, Claudia, and congratulate them for this beautiful house. And beyond that, Diogo, that you have put this insurance sector on the climate agenda, because everything that I heard here was music. Is an absurd. Insurance is not, they're not part of this agenda yet. It's really absurd for me to hear that. So this insurance sector developed sophisticated ways and climate risks that we're seeing that are absolutely fundamental, that we know the data that's been shown the last 33 years. It was greater 5 times the disasters that we see that Brazil has, climate disasters with Rio Grande do Sul and what happened in Panama, and a lot of climate injustice. So we price the risks, we mitigate the risks, we diversify the risks, and like we say, we develop mechanisms and products to transfer these risks. So we need to get all these sophisticated models that we develop, not only on the insurance sector, but on the capital market, and put all together with this private sector, public sector academy. We have a protection gap very big in Brazil. We don't lose to anyone in this comparison. And they talk about China. The third one is China. So they are ahead on the BRICS. We're really behind on this agenda. And really, we need to advance a lot more on this agenda. We have an opportunity in the insurance sector, not to get money, not to make money, not only for that, but for us to take advantage of these models that we developed. Us at ERB, we are a reinsurance company. We are an open company. We presented our results from our company. We are the reinsurance company. We have 20% of the market share. Consider all the international and the domestic ones. Now we have a solvency of 250%. So we can protect the markets, the domestic markets, and transfer these risks and work along on the private sector with the academic parts, with INPA, with a university in Denmark. And now we're not working. We've been working the past 2 years in our research area and development with climate risks, but we're going to create a research center beginning January with CNseg, with other partners, to mainly to bring this part of regulation And this partnership, public and private, with academic parts, the regulators, WICs, so we can develop these partnerships that are very important for us to advance in this big gap. Thank you. Jean, your collocations, please. Thank you, Gorete. I'd like to thank also the invitation, CNseg, weeks, or maybe here I'm a researcher from INPE. This is the Spatial Institute of Research here in Brazil. Like Maria highlighted, we've been developing a tool of risk analysis within the context of related to planning, social planning, and public planning. That was the initial idea of this platform. It's called Adapta Brasil, that navigates through this sector, like you mentioned, also, that Maria brought also for us here, that it goes from health to infrastructure. So the idea is, how do we bring science a more robust for this matter? This climate matter, you can do a prognostic. You have certainties associated with that. Well, we are projecting, that is projecting the climate. But there's a context related to the society that it's to be shown, it's given in the structure that we have today. Where the people are living, how is the system being organized, the health system and the protection system, and answer, and even the insurance system. So we have a structure, social structure, that's given. How is this structure thinks in the future, for the future, considering the climate, of course. So the risk analyses in the insurance sector are really sensational, the modeling, very complex and important. So the challenge is to put this layer of climate and environment. And climate doesn't express very punctual. For example, heat wave is something punctual. We saw in Paraná, a city, particularly one city within that territory that suffered a greater loss. How do you map this and project that? That's not trivial. So what you search and been working in the INP, what is this idea of this tool? INPE's institute, like INPA, from a constellation from MCTI. So we worked with a public data, open platform, accessible. So the idea is for us to bring this element on the context that we saw is social ecologic, or social structural. Here, we're in Belém, and then the reality is a bit different from here, from other cities. So what do we try to do? Within this information context, there'll be expressive on the territory. So this platform was built so this information will be available to municipalities in the country. So you get the climate, we've been talking about a lot about resilience here. But resilience here, it's an element associated to vulnerability of the system. And vulnerability, something that's measurable. And it's measured by how the event is sensitive, and how was built this capacity of reaction that can be called the resilience, this adaptive capacity. So it's part of the risk. It's not only climate risks. It's climate risk associated to the space, to the territory, to the environment. And the insurance sector already looks into this. It's the metric into the insurance companies. You just have to put this vision into what we've been doing, and Maria highlighted very well, to do in a way that we have what's the metric, risk metric, that we're going to use related to climate risks, to have actions in the country that will dialogue with others. For example, how do we do that? This platform, we're looking for this. We're starting to work with the heat waves to bring this element analysis and INPE of projection we did in INPE. Heat waves nowadays, they are 7 times greater than they were 30 years ago in terms of time that it's sorry to stretch here a bit, but this platform, it's advancing a lot. So I'd like to also the weeks, it's a very important partner that we've been talking with CNseg for many times, Pedro, first to mainly to the sector have this co-built, that's the right word, a tool that will be important and anyway have transversally the necessities of the sector. So this is the last points here. The INPI just brought here a supercomputer, a new one. So these projections, climate projections, we're going to be able to run with more intensity and in a greater and a smaller resolution, because that's a great problem. You project the climate with a global model, it goes 200 kilometers. So these grids, to reduce the grid and have a greater spatial resolution and cities from the space and certain spaces in the territory that are important for a risk or another. We're having issues with the audio here. Okay. Friends here from the that put up here on the panel what we see. If we see the United Nations said a news here that it says about 2024, we had $220 billion loss, 320 billion loss that we have. Economical losses direct related to these natural events. The United Nations related this number of they understand if it's a short, long term, including health, capacity of recovery. If we're able to say, for $2.3 trillion. We have a factor times 7 multiplicator factor to multiply. We're talking about Brazilian economy in terms of size. We're talking about Brazilian economy, where there's a direct or indirect harm, which is the 8th biggest economy in the world, and yearly. This is a data that it's important for us to codify these effects. When you look at these initiatives, it's a happiness for us to see a lot of models being created. Even though we agree a lot, we have to have a unified vision of risk and quantification, but initiatives that will answer this gap closing. We have with the global leaders in trading and risk. We brought to Brazil in 2020. Last year, August last year, the first model probability related to Brazil. We're able to look, now have the component of forecast, but a statistic forecast of the net damage in the regions that are affected when the providers didn't exist. So we're able to develop the first. Inside the group, we have a company that in 30 years setting up the statistic models, doesn't have these independent providers. And I'm very happy to see that we go to beyond the anniversary of 1 year of this introduction, the launching of this model, and just based on the negotiations, we were able to bring $6 billion reais of catastrophic insurance to Brazil. So mainly after a mathematical revision of the capacity, we're able to grow a little bit over 6 billion reais, the availability of resources for the insurers, and we understand about that. The models, we're all going to agree the science comes here to help. We're not here to say that that's not going to be more expensive or less expensive. The more that I bring training, resources, and offerings, the more that will transform into resilience. One of the main points here is for us to understand and how these solutions will go through all of us. I'll go to the private initiative with organs and institutes. They'll go through the governmental bodies. We put our availability on our model so everyone can argue about the premises. We buy data from countries all over the world, from companies. We have a data from INPE to add the statistic factor with the forecast that is ahead. It becomes a tool that is very powerful for bodies, organs, peoples, insurers, and that's why we bet a lot on that. So you have a bit of some advancements into our debates, but that's how we want to open up and to cover everyone. Thank you, Pedro. Pedro Werneck. We heard here insurance and reinsurance companies and academic parts. How do you put in the global sector for the advancements and challenges on the contributions of the adaptation of climate contributions? First of all, a mention, an honors mention to air conditions, the Casa de Seguro, green zone, blue zone since yesterday, and the air conditioning been a component, a fundamental component into the agenda of adaptation. We got here with copy an objective that was very serious to include the insurance and our discussions about the climate and I think we reached that objective. We are very objective to bring the insurance declaration, final declaration of the leaders, and with that, all the repercussion with the domestic market, international market in terms of development of new products, in terms of to become privileged as a social, environmental, resident ways in terms of eventual limitations or obstructions of some businesses. Here, what's main here and focus on climate and nature, we need to debate mainly on the point of view of Brazil. How are we going to be able to strengthen this Brazilian vocation related to nature, related to the bioeconomy? We reach here on COP30 with an agenda, institutional one, agenda very robust. The three main ones, because it's the time that I think I'll be able to spread a bit and explain a bit. The first one is insurance for solutions based on nature. Now the market related to insurance has products already, exceptional products that can be adequate and needs to be adjusted for operation to restore the forests to agroforestation and crops and harvesting and everything. So at any given moments in the Casa de Seguro was mentioned, and the air is insurance. The air, there's an insurance for the air. It's very tailor-made. And what we try to go upon and to massify these offerings, we have some challenges, technical challenges. It's not a rocket science. And some with structural parts. And the ecosystem. So we're able to go back on the scenario and revert. I'll go back to Pedro, now the other Pedro. So here at the same time, Brazil has a low penetration of insurance. Low adhesion by the way of by the population. For example, auto insurance that it's most used one, it's still half or less than half of the average, the global average. I'm talking about new modalities of insurances. So how do you see how to overcome this challenge? What's innovation that overcome this challenge? What are the obstacles? How do you resolve this matter? Thank you, Gorech. To address this answer, to close the gap, it's in anyone's head related to any panel related to insurance that we try to argue. It's a something that we worry. Talk about Brazil. It's a global worry, generally speaking, that we brought some numbers earlier. When we look at the US, it's the best one with a 41% of gap for each dollar. It's almost 1 for 1, which is not. There's a study from Geneva Association for OCD. They list a lot. It says 3 pillars for us to answer what it is, the protection gap, and the answer, how do we close? We need to look how it's generated. A pillar, it's part of the medium income. It's more macroeconomy. We're a country of medium and low income. So the potential, it gets low. The buying that allows the people to go into the equation. The second one is risk perception. There's even a song about this. We thought that we're blessed by Lord, that our nature is simply abundant and will cause any harm. And we've been seeing more and more, and that's not true. We look at Rio Grande do Sul in 2024 was a big impact, that it was a very rich state, and the airport was closed for almost 4 months, and 2022 was a record for them already. We see this year the tornado to vanish with a city in Paraná. We saw the Toyota, one of the greatest manufacturers, to stop their manufacture because a factory that was damaged in the countryside of São Paulo. We saw these corridor of hurricanes that happened in the Caribbean and US. We're seeing that in Brazil now. The second factor, once I quantify these data for us to understand, in Rio Grande do Sul alone, it's 30% the debt that it has to the government, that has to do with it's 2% of the public dividends. That is a country that has high dividends. 80% we have from the GDP. Just to renew people, we have 1.3% of dividends and debts. It's very relevant when we look. And how do you translate to this? We were talking about interest. Even those who didn't lose their house or didn't lose their car, that it wasn't even close to that damage, it's paying for the bill. If we look at the data, even CNseg, it's around 6% of these claims that are being paid, that it was paid in Rio Grande do Sul. The only 6% were paid in Rio Grande do Sul, we're paying the other 94%. It's a capacity of investments and that. Let's look at the insurance market. You have a balance to be this management of land, not to be with debt, with resilience, support of resilience and prevention to close this gap. It will go to, and the third pillar is development of the market. The insurance market didn't develop, but I'll have to adapt the products related to nature, the damage, natural damage, and to price that there's not nowadays. We have insurers, individuals, insurance companies. It's very sophisticated in that way, Brazil. But like my friend here says, in a very specific way, in a very individual way, with everyone's efforts to bring this, to answer to this challenge, that it's important for all of us, even though we're having individual losses or not. So we believe in that. So we see that the risk exists, and we're able to address the other miracles with the support of the government, from banks, and from the industry to massification of these solutions.
Thank you, Pedro. Jean? You talked a little bit about how science can support the insurance sector, but more specifically, how can science act in the classification of the risks and also in the creation of new products for these new challenges which we are facing in terms of climate adaptation? And what's your view? Well, I won't talk about economy, but what we certainly have to consider is that we are going through a process in which we have to try to reduce risks. And this in a transversal way. And reducing risks certainly means reducing the cost of life on an everyday basis. The adaptation, which is a mechanism that is very close to the reduction of risks, a lot of the investment in adaptation is not an investment that is returnable because it is an investment for territorial fitness, for example, reorganization of the occupation. It is an investment in the infrastructure that may somehow be returnable, let's say. So we need to have an important element, which is an investment of perhaps a public bank in this universe. And this risk reduction, to my understanding, this clearly is close to costs of everyday lives of people. So what I think, obviously what I think is clear, and Pedro also mentioned that, is that it is not a unique science. It's not a climate science that will solve this issue. Statistics is important, social sciences, economic sciences. It is multidisciplinarity, which is fundamental. So we stopped the climate discussion of the past, which was just mitigation. So what is causing that? Oh, okay, it's fossil fuels and so on and so forth. So the boxes which are associated to the processes that caused this climate trajectory, they have names, they are characterized. Okay, so they are associated to those boxes which do the cycling of this process. Okay, so the oceans and the Earth system and so on. But we left that behind. Why? It's not that that's not important. It is important. Mitigation is not out of the discussion table, but what strongly is on the table now are strategies for us to re-adequate the system, society, productive systems, the territorial organization, and this has close relationship with agriculture, with water availability, health. So if you get each one of these elements, you see the multidisciplinary need. You can't discuss health without having health. Someone from the health sector talking to you. And the same goes for the other sectors. So this multidisciplinarity is really important. And certainly this optimizes and qualifies better the projections, the forecasts of risks, and the characterization and definition of solutions. So we have to work together. They are co-produced, these questions. They are produced in an environment where you have different ways of seeing it, different actors. So science, multidisciplinarity is important for agents. Agents would coordinate. That would be the role. You all have said that there is a fundamental agent, which are the cities. Cities are close to people. So working close to cities, gathering data for the academia to be able to improve the models, work together with the cities to collect, treat, use this data is fundamental. So work in prevention. We have adaptation, but we also have preventive measures. So we have to work in a coordinated way and together. Maria Eduarda, IRB developed a series of models for risk assessment. Can you comment on that? Yes, thank you, Goretti. Multidisciplinarity, all areas, and multi-actors as well. The coordination of actors. Adapt Brazil is really important. I think the key word is integration. So the technological basis, which is integrated, is essential. And all the ministries, all the secretariats, the cities. So the key word is integration among all agents and all sciences as well. So that's why it's difficult. I come from the area of economics. We used to treat environment, ESG, separate from economy, but then the risk matrix have all to be integrated. So I was always an advocate that the ESG cannot be separated from economy. So I heard from a colleague say that, well, Amazon is too big to fail, economically speaking. And this is what we have to know. So IRB has been developing for 2 years. Our research area has been developing, thinking about climate risks. We have IFRS S1, S2, the impacts that we generate to the market, the impacts that climate changes generate to us, and so on. But we thought first how climate changes could affect our balance. And so we invested thinking that way, but we are also thinking about the externality that we might generate to society. So we will show in a while from here. I'm going to be with the Ministry of Cities in a while to think about the granularity that we can generate. We can go by street, by address. So with this amount of granularity, using not just models which are sophisticated, they use artificial intelligence. It's not only the past, the frequency will increase, the intensity will increase. So machine learning, artificial intelligence, all that's very complex. So we need to develop together. This will serve the market and will serve ourselves as well. We can create externality as well. We are trying to widen the R&D area to have a big research center to try to take advantage of this intersectionality and multi-players, multi-actors, a lot of research for us to together protect the future of society. Jean, okay, please complement, because Maria Eduarda is asking about Maria Eduarda has explained how the industry is getting close to scholars, to the academy. So what is the academy doing? Well, I think it is a challenge to the academy as well. It's an opportunity, and for us, developing this tool was really important because it gets into transdisciplinarity. When you have actors, you have the disciplines from the academy, but then you bring actors from other layers of society, let's say, to solve certain problems. So it's not just the scholars. I think it's an opportunity that you can't miss. And I think it is really important to see this connection of the academic development, scientific development, with the universe that is productive, that requires decision-making, that requires interaction with the economy. And there is science that does that, but I think climate science that usually was a harder science, let's say, it had to become more flexible because it has to discuss with all that. When I started working, the atmosphere, we had no idea what happened outside the atmosphere. It wasn't something that interested us. So this evolution, of course, has shown that we have changed a lot. I think it's a great opportunity, and we need to have the connection. And certainly not just through this platform, okay, but not just through this platform, but through other things like climate service, for example, weather forecast as well. This brings this connection, and we are really open to, I can say as INPE, okay, we are eager to work at this interface. The civil society as well, in the more ample way possible, not just us as ICs, but the police or civil defense, this kind of work that they're doing at the edge there to warn people, as well, to bring resilience to the population. Okay, wonderful. Pedro Farm. Okay, we talked about modeling, the contribution of science. What kind of modeling that has contributed the most for the classification of risks and the innovations in products in the insurance sector in your experience? And how does this kind of modeling that you have in mind, how can this modeling contribute to bridge the gap? Well, I think this conversation has been going on in the right direction when you can't just look at the past. We have a change environment, which is real. So we used, above all, computing and AI and statistics models. We developed an algorithm about global warming for the whole world. So nowadays we can, at any geographic point, try to estimate what damage will happen. So we ran in Belém just to illustrate where we are. So if you look at the flooding risk, it raises 90% if we if the heat increases. So this is strength for us to look. If the damage that I can see today will be 50% higher, depending on the degree of warming, and if I let it go up to 2%, I will see double of that. So to illustrate, Rio Grande do Sul is about 70% more prone to floods due to global warming. So this kind of example is what these technological models can address. So what we understand that we are working with some municipalities in Brazil. We work with 2 states of the federation exactly to be able to set up plans geared, based on these studies. What kind of construction that I have to do today for the water to drain, let's say, for that to be preventive of the results of global warming and to have a more resilient city. We can see budgets around 25 billion reais. So it is more than that. We are doing studies of reinsurance by state that can be distributed to the population. But if I don't have the mathematical tool, if I don't have a model associated, economic model associated to environmental models, which are different sciences, if I don't have the data, so the work has been done to gather data. How can I run this model with the precision that's needed without the correct data? So we are doing that in order to be able to gather this data through partnerships, so that insurance companies can feel that they can offer better because the price has been modeled more correctly. And the world has been giving this example as well. So we have been through this hurricane in Jamaica, the area that was affected we managed to recover part of damage, but the model in that area had been tested, and it has such a statistic precision that the reinsurance model followed that. So they anticipated it. They managed to help input chains to recover more quickly. So this is the strength that these models have. And we see examples, of course, we see areas which are little developed like Jamaica. So how they are bridging this gap, filling this blank, let's say. So without the partnership with the academia, this wouldn't have left the paper. So thank you, Pedro. Pedro Werneck, we are going towards the end of this panel. So I'm going to ask a very objective question here. How CNseg has worked to integrate the climate agenda in the strategy of insurance brokers? Okay, the insurance sector, which has been commented before, is highly affected by climate change. There is an important bias there, which we have been working on, which is an opportunity one. So how do insurance companies face this scenario from a standpoint of offering services, solutions, and widening their scope of act? The insurance sector communicates with the climate agenda in three main spheres: protection, induction of social environmental practices which are resilient, and investments. In the first one, talking about protection, there is a critical point. It is related to what Pedro has said before. It's related to cities. So the critical infrastructure and essential services. The second point is vulnerable population, which is the population that does not have the privilege of having an insurance. So on that stand, there is a perverse scenario regarding family budgeting. If the insurance will have to compete with clothing, food, insurance will lose. So thinking about that perverse and the role that insurance has to protect, we have to try to start seeing insurance as a public policy. It's a question, a plan that is comprehensive, an adaptation plan that is comprehensive, specifically now looking at the inducing. We have seen an increase in the number of insurance brokers that can privilege social practices which are environmentally responsible by giving additional incentives. This is a natural way for financial institutions. And the third point, making it viable, making investment viable. This transition process to low carbon economy will demand an incredible amount of capital for sectors which are critical. The insurance can make this investment possible. It can bring in capital, bring in more favorable conditions for credit. So the insurance decreases the risk so that they can scale. So with this profile of how climate change can become an opportunity, we have developed a series of initiatives. I will focus on some, which is the Climate Intelligence Hub for the insurance sector. This is an initiative that will gather together tools, events, reports, workshops. Nowadays, we have a lot of data about climate, but little information that is applied to insurance. So the hub has this purpose. In this first module, we have just launched the radar. Okay, we have just launched it. The climate events radar. This publication will become recurrent every year. We're going to publish it. So we will be able to bring with primary official data and data from private sectors and from insurance companies. We can measure the impact of the main climate events during the year and the reflex of that in the insurance sector. So we reach an index, a percentage, which is concerning 9% of protection only. So this report will subsidize us with information so that we can act institutionally in a more focused way. And very briefly, 2 other tools that will be released, okay, here at Casa do Seguro. The first one is a fundamental one, which is the verification of compliance for agriculture insurance. Nowadays, when a broker is going to evaluate the underwriting, they have to look at a number of database. Sometimes it's spread, it's not centralized. There are tools, okay, Agritech already made some tools available. The idea of CNseg is to democratize the use of this tool. It is one of our main roles here. And the second tool is an assessment tool that will evaluate climate risk using a score. We are first working on floods, so you will include their data for you to be able to get the score risk. It's not such a sophisticated tool, but once again, trying to democratize the use of these tools by the market. That's an initial kicking off that we have to work on. So this spoiler of these 2 tools and the launching of Radar today reflects the action that we have had, the steps that we have taken to place the insurance sector in the climate agenda. Thank you, Pedro. I have to ask the final question to Maria Eduarda, because IRB was the pioneer in Brazil to have a bond for insurance, this letter of credit. So it's important. It was an important landmark for the sector. And how can this widen the capacity of the sector in mitigating great climate events, helping mitigate? Okay, so insurance risk is well known. This is ILS is very much used. And this is an instrument, we were pioneers in that, and we have just had a regulation at the beginning of this year, and it's been regulated. And it is an instrument that we have to improve the regulation so that it is widely used. But it is important because the capital market capital can absorb part of the climate risk, which is not correlated to the capital market. So we can diversify this risk, amplify substantially the protection of society with regards to climate risk. So we are working to improve regulations and so that the framework so that we can widen the protection of society. Thank you. I would like to thank Eduarda, Maria Eduarda, Ometo, Pedro, Fan, and Pedro Werneck for your participation in this panel. Also, thank again CNseg for the opportunity of this debate, which was very enriching and cooperative, and wish you all a great afternoon. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Okay, insurance for nature-based solutions, NBS. This is our next theme. The panel offers a strategic opportunity to align production, environmental, conservation, financial security. This panel, how we can support production, environmental conservation, financial security, and how the insurance sector can support forest preservation and restoration, contributing to Brazil's national goal of restoring 12 billion hectares by 2030, and foresting, a sustainable agribusiness. We will discuss innovative insurance products designed to protect ecosystems, reduce climate risks, and promote investments that safeguard the environment while ensuring future generations' security. To start this panel, I invite onto the stage Rodrigo Cury, Executive Technical Superintendent from Brazil CNseg. Let's give them all a round of applause, please. Mabir Balderrama, Sustainability Director from Fazecolda. Butch Bacani, Head of Insurance from the United Nations Environment Program. Isabella Modelli, Specialist in Sustainability from MAFRE. Guilherme Basto, Coordinator from Fundação Getúlio Vargas, FGV. And Cláudia Trindade Prates, Sustainability Director from CNseg. A great panel for everyone. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here moderating this panel. First, with all these incredible lecturers that I admire, and that we can bring so many good things to this discussion. I'll wait for Butch to put on the phones. Thank you. Okay, now he can hear you. So that started since the beginning of COP, the provocation of how we can propel solutions based on nature. So I think Garo said there is no insurance for forests. I was watching that and I was waiting for this debate for us to be able to start discussing and showing the importance that the insurance sector has to be able to offer instruments so that a new sector, which is the nature-based solutions, as of now, NBS, all sectors have risks, and Brazil has a capacity of showing how this can be done and become a reference, not just because we have commercial forests, the insurance sector has products for that, but we are a reference in agribusiness as well. We have products for that. So how can we propel NBSs? So I prepared a few questions for us to start this discussion and to show how we can offer products and facilitate the financing of this new sector, which is truly important so that Brazil can fulfill the NDCs. 12 million hectares is a lot. So nowadays people talk a lot of collaterals. They're not used to financing. So it's a moment that the insurance sector can show what they can do and how banks can use our sector as a risk mitigator. I will start with a question for Isabella. Good afternoon, Isabella. Brazil has advanced a lot in the restoration agenda, and MAFRE is an important insurance company in this sector. So I would like to hear from you, what are the most promising opportunities for insurance companies in this field, and what paths can help support projects for restoration and sustainable reforestation?
First of all, I'd like to thank MAFRE to participate on this panel that's so important. And really, we have a protection gap. Speak about climate change and the forest cycle. Everyone from the insurance sector knows that there's the insurance forests or commercial forests, but the focus is not the climate change. It's a protection, economic protection. That forests that are non-commercial, talking about the insurance, we're talking about a legal reserve insurance, that we can go beyond that. And MAFRE is visualizing this opportunity and to support restoration. From my friend here, FGV, I was talking with it that we have projects of restoration nowadays. Then we launched the MAFRE Forest, which is a project of restoration. But beyond that, it's important to the insurance sector to position itself and show a insurance that are non-commercializable forests. Just to broaden that, and I invite everyone that is here those that are watching by the CNseg channel on Tuesday, I have a panel talking specifically about it, the launching of a product that is specific for this kind of forest. Because really, we understand the necessity to have the insurance as an incentive, a protection. If you think about, we're all here at COP and all the movements that we come here observing, Brazilian system of emissions and the necessity for insurance for a non-commercial forest just started. So we're talking about that we need to necessary these mechanisms so we're able to advance this theme and to support the governmental agenda, not only the private agenda, but the governmental agenda. That's why we want to reduce good practices like Floresta Mafri, which is a project to preserve the Atlantic forest, and the commercial agenda in this way to provide instruments. And again, I'll invite everyone for the 18th. So we have news on the 18th. Won't be able to lose that. We're provoked a lot at the beginning of COP. Data that Isabella told in your name on the insurance sector, it's fundamental. So consolidate evidence as sustainable practices that contribute to reduce risks. Through a long time, the radar will show that we launch how the agro sector is affected by the climate change. There's evidence, concrete evidence that this really happens. Claudia, good afternoon for the invitation for us to be here. I'm from the study centers from agribusiness from FGV. One of our pillars is to treat this theme of the insurance, the risk, climate risks, to a rural observatory, and we have a lot of evidence that all these practices, generatives, they treat and they bring greater resilience to the cultivation, to the property as a general way. Even with the great companies we've been dealing with, that SLC, the Roncador Farm, where you have a maintenance and preservation of the index of productivity, even though you have scenarios of droughts, lack of rain, in the case of these properties. So it shows clearly the contribution that the adoption of these practices brings for this resilience. Another important point that we have to remember, it's the matter of the carbon. We're doing a lot of work where we incorporate economic analysis, financial parts, environmental parts, and social. So we're able to do this measurement. We just launched a study, the matter of sustainable agro, but we have a plan of agriculture of low carbon that we have over 10 years in Brazil in the sector of agriculture, and using practices of the cattle and the dealing of related to livestock farming. We were able to reduce drastically the emissions, and in a way you can contribute to the reduction of our temperature, of global temperature. So we are full of evidence, but we need more and more have access to this information. Unfortunately, the government doesn't collect that in a systematic way. So we're able to count with the private sector and able to share this information with the research and with the academic parts. Thank you very much, Guilherme. Babi, I'll listen a bit to talk about Colombia, the experience to exchange and etc. Colombia advance and integration between nature and insurance. For us, it's very important to listen to that. What experiences, concrete experience Brazil can learn the market as piano in terms of nature insurance? Thank you for this invitation. Before I tell her that, I'd like to congratulate CNseg. I'm very happy we're present here and we feel at home here. The first thing that I'd like to share is about this question. In Colombia, we did a process of reflection of the importance that it has, the nature has for our business. And COP16 from last year helped us to see that is so important in the health and insurance sector and our main insurance, which is biodiversity. So this is the first layer of protection that we have. And that what we've been doing, it reflects on our intention from this that is well decided to pass in a focus of conservation for a focus that allows by the insurance to generate quick answers related to answers that has to do with our first layer of protection, which is the nature. I'd like to share 3 great experiences that we developed in Colombia, and most of them are still under development. And we have some very interesting lessons. The first one is to tell about the insurance parametric, this kind of insurance, the importance to protect the nature and the connection with these lessons, the parametric insurance for the corals here in our San Andreas archipelago. So this parametric insurance that was developed for a collaborative focus between the foundation, which is organization, private organization that manages the resources that's over towards this activity, and the government of Canada that invested with the resources. And the insurance sector domain was called for a local insurance company, Compatriot. And the good side of this parametric insurance is that based on these phenomena with hurricanes, it pays immediately. And with this resource, the groups from communities that are close to the value, that they have the knowledge how to restore these problems because of hurricanes, they have the mechanisms to do these interventions. So this project has a lot of characteristics that are very interesting, and mainly the participation of a lot of players in this community. So we have environmental authorities, the academic parts, the hotel sector, that it's present to be, it's one of the main activities when a phenomena happens like this in the San Andreas archipelago and in the provinces. So the private sector has the activities and depends on the health of the coral, so its presence and the training of the brigades of diving, that those that do the intervention when a hurricane happens. So it's a very interesting experience. Second time, it's the Casa de Seguro, which is the modem in Colombia. The last couple of years, we realized that to develop these solutions towards insurance, it was a work that we had to do since the beginning. The private sector has a lot of difficulty to see the possibilities in unknown segments. So we've built a mechanism that is the challenges of innovation. And with this platform, we invite the insurance companies and a lot of players associated to deal with these problems, to solve these problems in particular. So like to say that last year, by COP16 on biodiversity, there have been CAE, a larger challenge to protect the biodiversity, where the challenge is allowed to count with over 20 organizations, not only have with insurers, microfinance, NGOs, players from academic part to international corporations. So what was the results of this exercise? We had a insurance prototype that was proposed and is still under development by a Colombian insurance, a South American one, along with WWF, to create an insurance, a parametric insurance that protects the risk of fire, of blaze. This parametric insurance is activated. I apologize. There's audio issues. And this is another experience in which we are convinced to generate solution in the market. It's the only way to have a concrete action on the insurance sector, the diagnostics and the approaches. There are no use if we're not able to transform with the insurance products that answers these necessities. And the third example that I'd like to share is that we're doing the partnership of sustainability in the sector, ensure develop in a sustainable way, get higher and get higher into the other sectors, and other industries will also grow in a sustainable way, mainly that generate solutions that allow these activities, productive activities, understand the risk that generates related to nature and develop solutions of insurance that allow to manage these risks. And without a doubt, it affects the productivity. We allow the world full of risks. Like, for example, if we don't take care of the nature, it's a world that cannot be insured, that the insurance companies, they're not able, they have no reason for exist. So these examples, it illustrates the importance to work in partnership. If you've seen, if you guys have seen or are aware of this experience that I shared, it's always a collaboration and the participation of a lot of players with different capacity of knowledge. It's what brings, what makes it possible for us to advance. So we have a multidisciplinarity and a lot of interesting examples that we have our big biodiversity, and it's really on baby steps towards insurance, towards forests and biodiversity. We need to learn a lot and to know more of this alliance that it's very interesting. Thank you very much. Now, Bush, thank you very much for your presence here. I know you're going here and there and here. That's our intervention here on Casa do Seguro, and I'd like to hear from you that insurances based on nature, they're getting centrality in negotiations globally speaking. So that's being evident about climates and biodiversity, like it was put by Mabir. What is the role of the sector of the insurance in this paradigm, your vision in the insurance sector? What's your vision with this new paradigm, and how can we transform global compromises in products and metrics that are concrete in impact?
There was from incremental to exponential. So anything that we do has to be exponential already. It cannot be incremental improvements. It has to be exponential. So that was the message on science. So what is it that insurers can do to help achieve a nature positive economy? I think nature-based solutions is one of it, ensuring them. But I think we need to look at the entire value chain of insurance to really do justice on what insurers can do. First, we need to sharpen the axe within insurance companies. So, for example, catastrophe risk models traditionally have been looking at backward looking data. That has changed right now because now insurers are imputing climate science into their models and projecting forward on different climate scenarios. We need to do that for nature as well. If we do that for climate and nature, then insurers, as risk managers, are better able to communicate risk to communities, to governments, and society, and are able to help prevent and reduce losses by communicating that risk in a more science-based and quantified way. So then, before we even go to nature-based solutions, we need to think about what are the most nature negative activities in the world right now. And we know what they are. In the ocean, it's illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. It's commodity-driven deforestation. It's mining. It's large-scale infrastructure like hydropower. So more and more leading insurers across the world, just like what they did on climate, are adopting underwriting policies on the most nature negative activities there. Just like insurers have started creating underwriting policies on fossil fuels. Next, if you are an insurer, you have corporate and retail clients. You can engage with them. You can engage with them just like you are an investor in engaging with investing companies. If you look at the corporate clients that you insure, one of the important things that are coming out right now are transition plans of companies and how those transition plans are supporting the transition to a more sustainable economy. So if you are a business where you are transitioning to a net zero model or a more circular business model, that means less stress on nature, less emissions, and less pollution. So it's important to be able to see how insurers as risk managers can also influence and the behavior of their corporate clients. So for me, it is a spectrum. So you have the most of the economy, you have the most nature negative activities, you have the greenest activities, and in the middle is the gray zone. That's where most of the economy is. So where you have agriculture, steel, cement, manufacturing, they all need to transition to nature positive and net zero business models. And they need insurance to transition to those models. So before this event, before the one in the TED Countdown House, I was in the Blue Zone on an event on the role of insurance in de-risking investments and financing for sustainable and regenerative agriculture. There is transition insurance for those companies and farmers who want to transition to more sustainable and regenerative business models. And we need to do that for most of the economy. And then to your point on nature-based solutions, there's more and more innovation there. There's insurance now for coral reefs in the Mesoamerican reef by the coast of Cancun, where if the coral reef is damaged, it could be restored because there's a value for all the hotels by the coast in terms of the risk reduction benefits of having intact coral reefs in terms of reducing storm surge. There's now innovation about pilot insurance schemes in the Philippines, my country, where people are starting to look at insurance solutions for mangrove forests, for their risk reduction benefits, as also as for blue carbon credits. There's already innovation about ecological restoration insurance that's being used by insurers and reinsurers to help restore degraded forests, for example. And there's more. In 2008, we wrote a paper on whether insurers can write forest carbon. And so for many years, the answer was no one was able to write it. Now there are already a number of firms who are able to write carbon, unintended carbon emissions, carbon reversals, and which even have who can even insure you with carbon credits. So there's a lot of innovation there, but they need to be scaled. And I would go further than nature-based solutions. I would go to the full life cycle of insurance, including claims management. Does anyone know how much claims the insurance industry pays every year globally? Do you have a guess?
I don't know.
Any guess? So the estimate is $5 to $5.5 trillion. So if you repair instead of replace, if you build back greener using sustainable materials, you also reduce the pressure on nature, right? So that shows the full life cycle of insurance, showing that in every step of the way, you can help reduce pressure on nature. And this is not only a non-life insurance discussion, it is also a life and health discussion. I heard when we had an event in Europe recently in Brussels, it was a really interesting insight that I heard, that the health sector has a larger carbon footprint than the aviation sector. So imagine all the life and health insurers here or around the world, if they are able to address that in their supply chain, if they are able to, good health means you're more resilient, so you don't get sick. So but if you get sick, then you're susceptible to using more carbon intensive and nature intensive processes that degrade nature and emit emissions. So actually being healthy is one way to reduce nature loss. And that has an impact for life and health insurers as well. So I think I can stop there for now to show, I think that agenda has to be a more full discussion. It cannot be 1% of your portfolio is nature positive and 99% you're not doing anything. You need to look at nature from the entirety of your insurance business. And whatever I've said on insurance, you can do also on investment.
Thank you, but uma perspectiva muito interessante, assim,
A
gente
very
tá aqui
interesting
discutindo,
perspective that we're discussing
estamos aqui discutindo como impulsionar soluções
how
baseadas na natureza, dado que
to
o
deal with
Brasil,
these
as maiores emissões vêm do uso da
nature.
terra.
One of the greatest emissions in Brazil comes from the
Uma
use of the
forma
land, and ESPN, it's an effective way to
pegar pouco a fala do Bush.
give that,
Vou
to
levar
broad
você,
that.
Rodrigo, aproveitando
I'll
a
take
experiência
Rodrigo
grande
to
do
take
Brasil
advantage of
sempre
your
com
experience
agro,
for
agro
Brazil
sustentável.
Seg, agro, sustainable agro, what you guys have been doing for the insurance to be more sustainable in this line of birds as saying that Brazil has the innovative way, that we have a lot of innovative steps. How Brazil Seg is taking that to a agro that's more sustainable. Look at the chain as a whole, as Bud put to us. It's very nice. First of all, I'd like to thank CNseg and to congratulate Casa do Seguro, the name of BP Seguros and Brazil Seg. And Diogo's speech that he was saying the numbers, 9% of the insurance from the risks to claims that were protected. So this kind of initiative that helps really to potentialize the culture of protection, the culture of insurance. And talk a bit about Brazil Seg, to get a bit on what Bud has saying, the business model. We talk a lot about data, about information. So there's a lot of study centers, and we need to start to consolidate this information, this info. So we cannot get out of sight the qualitative data. We have data, but these data, they don't have a symmetry that we have back in the days. The events are more frequent now, more intense. All the panels that we've been participating, that we're still going to have here on the Casa do Seguro, they're going to speak about the same issue. The intensity and the frequency of these events, these extreme climate events, they're already mapped. the data is qualitative data. Looking back into the Banco do Brasil, we hear a lot about the rural producer, the one that drinks the coffee from the branch that from the bank. Maybe he takes a lot of information that are not mapped on the model. He brings what are his worries because he knows a lot about his property and the environment. So he brings that home. So that's an innovation when he brings that data. The qualitative data inside the modeling of insurance, it's an innovative step. So we personalize our conditions. So we speak a lot about differentiality so that clients that mitigates risk, that has technology, he's a partnership. He's a partner, business partner with the company, with the bank. So we treat our business partner, giving them better ways. We have consortium region. It's regenerative agriculture. They added 4 producers, 4 farmers, where we brought a lot of variables that weren't considered in our models. We incremented, we're able to do an offer with a differentiated way. And we have indicators also, like Lambert brought to us. We have signs already. The hypotheses are more and more confirmed that regeneration is positive. Now, with these indicators, we can confirm what are these variables. What has more effects in our betas and relativity when we talk about the academic parts? What has most effect inside the protection? What brings most balance? To bring nature to this equation, it's fundamental. So the more agent that will be working in favor of the mitigation of these events, the better. To take advantage that you has put to us, Rodrigo, I'd like to hear, Isabella, how Mafra is working related to the sustainable insurance, the agro business. I'd like to listen a bit from you, the counterparts, not a counterpart, but a complement, as Rodrigo has put to us. Of course, that we're cousins now, we're playing our companies. To talk about a bit about Mafra, take advantage of Bud's presence. It's a signature from the principles of sustainable related to insurance since 2012, since the beginning of all. Mafra is a signature showing that we try to use this pioneerism, and it's on Mafra's core to bring the integration of the criteria ESG inside our business, and our agro is no different. So we know that everyone works that works here with insurance. It's a subscription that utilize the climate data from the subscription, but we've been observing throughout the years, mainly from the last couple of years, that it's not enough only to look back. We need a lot to look forward with the forecast. So new this methodology of calculation of risk needs to include this new panorama of the rise of temperature in 1.5 degrees, something that we were working to integrate in our evaluation of risks and description of the risk of Mafra, not only of the products from agro products, but all the other products also. Another very important point for us is that recently Mafra relaunched a new version of the subscription of sustainable insurance. So we look not only inside our risk calculation, but we look also outside. We also look which clients. It's very important. Whether it's not a main mechanisms of mitigation in some cases, but it impulsionates some. So it's very important for the insurers to show this compromising Mafra throughout this subscription service, limits or even exclude some kind of clients that are not aligned with a transition plan, energetic, for example, or other ones that are outside the scope that we understand, that is not going to help or impact negatively related to the climate changes. And another important point, like Mafra sees, is the insurance in agro. It not only treats about the financial instruments. We talk about the food safety when we talk about insurance safety also. It allows a farmer that has the possibility to gain a productivity that lost, a harvest that it lost, So it shows us that Mafra really observes and integrates all the ODS 11, 15, and other ones that are integrated into our business, looking from the inside or from the outside, and observe the insurance our business is more than a commercial business, but it's a protection to sustainability, resilience, climate resilience, and in financial instrument also.
Okay, the insurance collaborates with a more resilient, like Glenn was saying. So the researchers in agro are really important to subsidize the sector. We believe the financial sector as a whole, banks, financial markets working in the line that Butch has said, looking at the client as a whole, the nature as a whole. This is very important for us to reach a low carbon economy, a more resilient one. Okay, so insurance sector protecting new money, because it's no use for you to have a problem in your harvest and then you refinance and no new money comes in, which is the insurance money. So how can you your company substantiate with data to create this virtual cycle of new resources and food safety, like Isabella has said, which is truly important for a Brazil that depends on agro? Well, not just food safety, energy safety as well. What you have mentioned is exactly what we have worked on. I can see now the Institute Clima Sociedade, Garrizo is representing this institute here. They have helped us set up a project with regards to the impact of climate changes in harvest. So instead of just looking what we did behind through the zones and the climate risks, but we have to look forward. So there was a compilations of databases, soil, hydric balance, temperature, to be able to project looking forward what the IPCC has shown in terms of climate change until 2050, trying to map, seeing how this risk will be. We added a phase together with Howden in London that saw our work, and they are working on precifying this risk in the long run. So 500 years forward. So to be able to give more information and sustainability for support for the insurance companies to be able to go deeper into this industry. So this is what we are working on. We are working at that through the observatory. Rodrigo commented quite well that we have a lot of data, accessible data, but we need to coordinate and we need to converge these analysis around public policies that will have the participation of the private sector. So this is what we are working on day and night. Okay, I'll change the order. I'll hear from you, Rodrigo, because we have been provoked that the sector in many panels we have been provoked. So how are you thinking of products for native forests, for the legal reserve? I know you have worked on that with innovations. So how do you see that for us to be here next year and be bringing new cases to show in the next COP? Well, it's always important to start with numbers, figures. Data from FAO 2020, we have 4 billion hectares in forests in the world. This represents 31% of the Earth's surface. And more than half of that is in the 5 countries which have continental size: Brazil, China, Russia, Canada, and Australia. And we launched last year a product, Native Forests, with a focus on permanent preservation and legal reserves, a parametric insurance. So we launched that product, and talking a little bit about obstacles, just for us to understand the market better. It is as if we were, let's say, pulverizing the risk, having the risk widespread instead of just being centered. So when the market for carbon accelerates, I think we will hook on that. We'll surf the same wave. You don't need only to have a product, a new product in your portfolio. You need to be the producers, the rural producers' portfolio. They have to understand that through insurance, they will reduce vulnerability. So when we talk about climate, we say that climate is the patient zero. This is the beginning. So this kind of protection is really important. It is an agent, a positive agent for civil society. Okay, I'd like to hear a little bit from you. What are the factors that can accelerate the engagement of brokers in this alliance? How can we have a Latin American alliance to propel the preservation of the biodiversity of forests? Well, this question is difficult to answer because I can think that there are many things that can help to have this action, this conscious action about our industry, to contribute and to be careful with the nature. But I would say as three steps that we can retrofeed. For example, it's really important to incorporate within the decision-making process from insurance companies to incorporate the frameworks, the legal frameworks. We have these global frameworks, everything that's been done in different countries in terms of green taxonomy, sustainable goals, all the incorporation of criteria, ESG criteria in decision-making to be able to guarantee and to invest is fundamental so that these aspects will be part of our business. I would say that the industry, insurance industry, like no other, has the sustainability of risk, let's say, to be able to manage a risk in an adequate way is what will guarantee that these activities that count on insurance, they can recover when they are facing difficulties. We are sustainability vehicles, let's say, and this allows us to understand more clearly that these new risks, these emerging risks, the ones which are unknown, the ones which are hard to model, they are businesses for the sectors. And so we are fundamental actors in this exercise of reducing this risk. So the first one here is incorporating standard with regards to our corporate governance. ESG should be part of decision-making. Second, it's necessary to understand these risks. Many times, the knowledge is a specialized knowledge, so we have been doing the following. The FASECODA, we developed a program for human talent of the insurance sector. We have the sustainability school. Since 2018, we developed 7 cycles for education. We have theoretical components, practical components. We had courses on eco-efficiency, ESG for the insurance, carbon footprint, focused on insurance portfolios. And the next cycle of education, which will start next week, has to do with helping to the insurance company to answer the new requirements for supervision in Colombia, which are mandatory for, which make it mandatory for financial sector to incorporate ESG within decision-making. So this cycle will allow us to follow the brokers in this deployment program of how to identify risks, how to measure, how to disclose results. And I would say the following as well. How can we be a space of work? Maybe thinking about a regional view. I believe that the experience that we have been cultivating in FASECODA with the support of our government and banks and international cooperation through institutions of Colombia, creating an innovation lab there in insurance, these labs are inclusive and they have a view geared towards resilience. So this is an experience that shows us the importance of bringing through a collaboration space different actors from the ecosystem, have international cooperation, the local government, understand the challenges and needs, and how from the insurance sector, we can place there our grain of sand to the development of solution and understand that sometimes the way you will structure an insurance product for banks that finance housing or protect the sea, this is not within the scope of the insurance brokers environment. So we have to act together with other players from those sectors to develop solutions. And this is what we are doing in our lab. And of course, it could be an experience that we would like to share with other countries, including thinking that through the network, which exists in PNUD, our region there, we can extend this experience as we have been doing in the Dominican Republic, Argentina. I think it's a very interesting space for us to be able to analyze and decide how we go from an idea to action and solutions, which is certainly the theme here. Yes, I think this engagement will be really important. I will be dismissed from my moderator role here because my time is up. So much the last speech is yours, please, but to finish off, COP30 has been seen as the adaptation COP, and mitigation is there, but adaptation came as the strongest word. What message would you like to leave to the insurance sector, Brazilian insurance sector, in this COP with regards to adaptation?
The message is adaptation and mitigation are two sides of the same coin, just like climate change and nature loss are two sides of the same coin. I think it's a false narrative to think that we can adapt to everything. There are hard limits to adaptation. In fact, warm water coral reefs already have apparently reached their thermal tipping points already. So hard limits to adaptation mean that there at some point you cannot adapt anymore because the tipping point has been breached. So it's foolish to have, it will be a losing strategy to have an adaptation only strategy. It will be a losing strategy if you have an emissions reduction only strategy. You need to do both. And as I mentioned earlier, climate change is also, if we want to solve the climate crisis, we also need to solve the nature crisis. If you want to solve the nature crisis, we need to solve the climate crisis. So I would consider halting, I would consider nature and emissions reduction and adaptation are all interrelated. If you look at it as risk reduction, and reducing emissions and halting nature loss are risk reduction at source. We cannot eliminate all risk, so we need to adapt to residual risk that we cannot eliminate. And then the residual risk could be shared through insurance mechanisms. I think the fact that we are here in the Amazon is really an important symbol. And I think one can consider the Amazon as the microcosm of nature in general. And perhaps my last message is that people may confuse that sustainability is simply about saving the planet. It's not actually just saving about the planet. I mean, the planet can be incredibly resilient and regenerative. The question is that could our generation and future generations lead a quality of life that's healthy and safe and with dignity? And that's the reason why we are addressing these issues, because ultimately sustainability is a social issue. It's about us. And so I think we need to show that we need to have that foresight, that we're not just reducing emissions or halting nature loss just for the sake of environmental protection. It's ultimately social. It's about every person in this room. It's about the communities in the Amazon. It's all about the communities across the globe as well.
Muito obrigada. E para mim foi uma honra moderar esse painel.
Thank you. It's been an honor to moderate this panel. We have a lot of homework now for integration and to continue working. Next year, we hope we will have showcases to see that we have reached some resilience, to have climate adaptation and mitigation in the country. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. We will now go to panel 3, promoting innovative insurance initiatives. This the theme of our last panel of the day. We will debate how the insurance sector is reinventing itself, facing climate change, requiring technological innovation, new business models, and strategies to expand the availability of insurance products aligned with the climate agenda. This panel will cover key technological trends and emerging climate insurance models, presenting successful case studies that showcase the potential of these initiatives, solutions to scale up insurance for nature-based solutions, strengthening social environmental resilience, and fostering a more sustainable and accessible insurance market. Okay, for this panel, I invite onto the stage Svenja Sersmiskin Manage, Director Climate from Marsh McLennan. Jorge Castelomendi, Senior Director from Atlantic Council. Frederico Aubert, CFO and co-founder of Carbon Pool. Rachel Del Reis, co-chairs of the Insurance Development Forum, IDF, Risk Modeling Working Group, and Head of Sustainability of COVIX Insurance. A round of applause. Adriana Campelo, Regional Coordinator for UNDRR. Luca Rizzo, Senior Climate Finance Specialty Leader from ICS. I wish you all a great panel. Hello. Well, the last panel of the day, but I'm sure it will be the best of the week. Okay.
Different challenges, but also different solutions. And we're saying a lot that this is the COP of implementation, the COP of truth, the COP of adaptation, but I can say that is the COP of insurance as well, because probably this is the fifth or sixth discussion that I'm having on insurance only this week. So I feel that there's a great mood to advance on insurance. I'm also learning a lot in terms of the challenges, but we're here to discuss how these nice people are handling these challenges. So we will start with some solutions to keep the mood very positive. We'll also discuss the challenges and then conclude on what should be the next steps to overcome this challenge and how COP30 can be a driver for that. So I would like to start with you, Frederick. You are leading a very innovative insurance company on nature-based solutions. And I would like you to present what you're doing, what types of initiatives you're supporting, and how your company can overcome the challenge that we discussed in the first and second panel around nature-based solutions.
We started Carbon Pool off a rather harsh statement. We were talking to a nature-based developer And the developer said, you know, you insurance companies, you're useless. What do you mean you're useless? Well, I'm out there planting trees, trying to help with biodiversity, trying to get carbon out of the atmosphere, and I just can't get my project insured. And we looked at each other and said, well, normally, I mean, insurers can model risk. We can figure this out for you. I'm sure we could get a good quote for you if you need to insure your forests. And he said, no, I've already tried that. It doesn't work because what I actually need to have insured is not the money that I put into the project. It is the climate impact and the carbon that it is taking out of the atmosphere. And that made us think about the actual premise of insurance. And the premise of insurance is that you insure risk that you incur, and the insurance company indemnifies you and makes you good for that damage. That relationship works very well when you're insuring this house or your car outside, where the insurance company gives you money if something happens to it, because the money allows you to fix the roof or your windshield or whatever took damage. It breaks down when we're talking about something as fundamental as the climate and nature, because a cash payout doesn't undo the climate damage that a wildfire or a storm event has on a nature-based product. And with this in mind, we said, okay, we have to turn the model of insurance on its head to be able to meaningfully take risks away from nature-based projects. And we did that by buying carbon credits, building a balance sheet of carbon credits to then be able to actually pay out claims in the currency in the unit that matter to the climate and that also matters to our clients. And I'm very fortunate to say that we've been doing this or building this as a fully regulated carrier with a regulator out of Switzerland that is famously quite conservative. But because the problem we were working on was so fundamental, we actually found a tremendous amount of openness to really do something new, and love to give you more insights into what we're doing and how these innovations can be used in the broader context.
Just where are the projects that are supported by your initiatives? Which countries?
Well, the beauty is, just as we share an atmosphere and climate is a global problem, so are the projects we insure and the projects we invest into. It's a completely global thing. Many of them are actually here in Brazil, given the vast potential that Brazil has as a country to reforest and spearhead a lot of the nature-based restoration that we need globally.
Great. This is very important because just today we also heard that there's no insurance or solution available for this type of project. So here's one solution. Jorge, up to you now. You just launched a report on bioeconomy and insurance, or the lack of insurance. And I would like also to listen from you. What do you see as the perspectives, solutions, and what do you see as some examples also on the bioeconomy sector, on the risking, but also insurance?
Thank you, Luca. Thanks for the invitation. And I was told that at some point a QR code is going to show up on the screen, so people can actually get the report. That's what I was told. But just wanted to say one thing, Luca. This is my 17th COP. I've been to several, and this is the first time in 22 years since I started going that there is a house of insurance. So this is certainly a testament to that evolution. What we found in the report, I would say, are more challenges than opportunities. So I'll wait for those challenges to explain those challenges in a second round. But in the case of opportunities, one thing that could be seen as a challenge, but is actually a huge opportunity, is how can you use insurance to de-risk the investment, the perceived risk of those investments. So it's not only that you have, figure out ways in which you can use the data to make sure that you can insure specifically and reduce the risk of the actual investment, but also the financial ecosystem that needs to support those investments needs to be addressed and could be addressed by insurance, being that, whether you need a warranty or you need a collateral, or even if you need, you want to issue a bond like that, insurance can actually come in and figure out ways in which you can reduce the investment risk for activities that usually are perceived as risky because you cannot measure the actual, it's really hard to put a value or measure or quantify the risk of that particular asset. Oh, great, look at that. So you have the QR code there, you can scan it. So I would say, these are early days, particularly for the bioeconomy, which is a huge opportunity here in Brazil, particularly after G20 last year and all the efforts that were done to advance that business space here in Brazil and elsewhere. And so that's where I see insurance, and I'll keep pounding on that in the following interventions. But you have to look at the whole continuum and how insurance actually comes from the early stages and start de-risking every single step of the way, particularly in the spaces in which you haven't tested yet the field, such as bioeconomy.
Insurance as a driver for investments, not only for disasters, right? So we have already that, right? So some infrastructure projects, you have performance insurance related to project finance transactions. So why we cannot create this type of market for nature-based solutions in some forest countries that rely on this type of projects to reduce emissions as Brazil, right? Svenia. Marsh has big experience on this as well. And you can share with us some more international experience on what you see as the drivers for nature-based solutions as well. So if you can just complement what we had here from Frederick and Jorge, it would be good as well.
Yeah, well, many thanks, and it's great to be here. A big thank you to CNseg. I mean, it is fantastic. It's not just an insurance house, it's a very green insurance house, so it's really incredible. I wish I could claim some kind of credit for this, because back in 2014, I went over to Rio to do some climate training for the CNseg leadership. And I wish I would have said, you need to create a COP insurance house, because then I could say, well, anyway, I'm sure there are lots of brains behind this, and a big thank you. And Marsh McLennan is a very happy and very proud supporter of this. And we have many colleagues here, so it's really great. I want to start with just briefly, so what is different this time round? People said it's an insurance COP. I'm not sure that's actually a good sign, because I want to say what's different now is the urgency. So I went to my first COP to COP6. So you do the math. I was a young student. And what is different now is the urgency. And there's just no way we can sort of, climate change is here. We're living with it. And we see the impacts earlier this week. I published, together with colleagues from Marsh and Colombia and Mexico, a report for the Inter-American Development Bank. And one of the findings is that every single hour, this continent loses $1.2 million to climate-related disasters. Just let that sink in. I mean, that is massive. And maybe that is a reflection on why suddenly people say, oh, this is an insurance COP. Because if something is bad, is costly, then people turn to insurance. Well, let me now give you the positive take on this. And I think that's what we're here, because when we were discussing this panel, we said, oh, we need to talk about the positive developments. And, I'm very much up for that. So the positive story is there are a really increasing number of good solutions out there. And I have the pleasure of working across the Marsh McLennan family. So I work with colleagues from Marsh, Guy Carpenter, you had Petro here earlier, Oliver Wyman, and with Mercer. And I see across the globe really good scalable solutions. And I give you sort of three, I call them buckets. So one is on the climate transition. So, the progress on emission reduction is too slow, but we can see this now sort of taking shape for good economic reasons. So I think this recognition that insurance can actually even help accelerate the transition by de-risking the transition has led to really, really interesting examples. And I see some colleagues here from Marsh who really sort of set the scene in terms of providing, carbon credit insurance facility or hydrogen. I think we were like the first broker to provide hydrogen insurance facilities. CCS. I mean, I think you give a technology, and it's my opinion, insurance isn't really the blockage there. The other bucket, and I think this is something that we're going to come back to a lot, is adaptation and resilience. I mean, that's like the bread and butter of insurance. We started the climate conversation with disaster risk. And it's kind of there where we see changes to the insurance model. It's kind of building resilience into the solutions, building back better, having resilient bonds. We're working across Latin America with cities to help them understand risk and solutions. And then the third bucket is nature. And nature-based solutions, as we've heard here, yes, a really big part of this. But how can we, again, help to de-risk it? Environmental liability has come a long way. We have biodiversity, net gain, and insurance can help facilitate that. So, there's plenty of things that keep me optimistic, but we need to scale them up. And I think that's something we're going to discuss here.
Yeah, and there's a big market for this as well, because there's several sectors that insurance can be a solution. And there's this famous phrase, there's no size that fits all, because we need to present different solutions.
Nós temos que apresentar
insurance with financial mechanisms, insurance with guarantees, insurance with carbon solutions. There's for me in these panels that I heard, it's interesting because there are several things happening in the insurance market. That's why it's interesting to see the insurers coming to COP to discuss that. And IDF is here. IDF, which is an international association with some good pilots, right? Some studies already, a policy brief that you launched this year with Barbados on different ways to de-risk countries, but also on the private sector, you have some good examples. So it would be good to share with our colleagues here in Brazil.
Yeah, so I am head of sustainability for Convex Insurance, but also, as it says, co-chair of this thing, the Insurance Development Forum. And the Insurance Development Forum is made up of a number, about 100 or so companies who are all members of this, and similar resilience agencies, but also it's a tripartite arrangement with the World Bank and the UNDP. And the purpose of it is to try and use those skills, that experience to expand the footprint of insurance in the developing world. And it's been in existence for 10 years thus far. But there's one aspect of the work that I'd just like to touch on now, which is when we talk about how we try and get private, there's a lot of talk about this week, et cetera, about getting private finance into climate adaptation and resilience. And that's part of what the idea is all about. But we insurers sit on enormous assets as well as the insurance that we can do. So the Insurance Development Forum have launched a fund called the Infrastructure Resilience Development Fund, and this is a sort of new departure for the IDF. So a group of 6 of us members of the Insurance Development Forum said, look, we're not investing in infrastructure in the developing markets, which we could do, and that obviously goes towards helping the economy, helping make these geographies more insurable. So we appointed BlackRock to raise the funds for this fund, the infrastructure fund, and they then go on to run it and source the projects. But the interesting thing about it is that it's been structured in such a way that it allows us insurers who have to have a relatively conservative risk appetite around our investments to sit at a sort of senior level, and then the World Bank's investment arm, the IFC, take the junior tranche. So it's a way of bringing in new finance, new money that wouldn't normally go to. We wouldn't have normally invested in emerging market debt and infrastructure had it not been structured in this way. And a further sort of risk, the way in which they've diversified the risk is that geographically it's diversified. It's got quite a focus on Latin America. BlackRock have a good footprint there and work with local banks, Asia, and then to a certain extent, Africa. And the projects themselves have to have impact criteria. So it's very important whether it's to do with energy transition, whether it's to do with the communities they're serving, it has to have impact criteria to qualify for the investment. And then then it has also got a sector. So the different sectors that it'll invest in are transport, waste and water, digital, and transport, waste and water, digital, and a fourth similar. So that's the purpose of that fund, and it was launched last month. It's about 320 million, and it's kind of seen as a pilot. So it's going to grow. The idea is that it's going to grow quite significantly with it, and that's, I think, quite a nice example of how you bring new finance into ways in which you can strengthen and therefore allow the footprint of insurance to come in. But interestingly, the ways in which it sort of could apply to nature. So in a similar vein, there is in asset management now starting to be a little bit more investment in nature-based asset. There are some blue bonds. I would give a shout out to BNP Paribas, who are doing a very good job in launching blue bonds in that way. So, and I heard somebody earlier on this week talk about saying that if we just switch infrastructure, if we want to attract investment, because it is infrastructure, right? If you think of a coral reef, it's infrastructure. So it would be lovely to think that at some stage, a fund like the one that I've described could direct its funds towards nature-based assets as well.
Very interesting. Yesterday, IDB launched a guarantee mechanism to countries to switch debt for nature. Like the Barbados case, but they created a standardized instrument for that. But you mentioned a very interesting approach, that is the insurance industry acting as investor, right? And just this week we had Diogo from CNseg also mentioned that for TFFF, the insurance companies could be a potential investor. And that would be terrific. Imagining international companies investing on a 125 billion fund that can provide fees to countries to protect tropical forests. So this is very good, and this is one of the achievements of this COP. And we spoke about infrastructure. Last week we launched a report that we assessed 20 infrastructure projects in Brazil, large ones, in terms of resilience criteria. Only about 90%, only about 10% of these projects had resilience and also clauses that had any type of adaptation mechanism, which shows that we are highly vulnerable here in Brazil. Our infrastructure is highly vulnerable, and we saw that in the Rio Grande do Sul disaster, that our airport was closed for almost 3 months. So imagine the private sector institution that is running the airport staying 3 months without revenues, right? So this takes us to the conversation of public policy. So how we can use and discuss the insurance industry to also support the shaping of public policy. And we have here Adriana from UNDRR. Now I could say it. That was just studying and discussing the G20, the group of the biggest 20 economies that issued some recommendations in terms of insurance and policies. Can you share with us?
Thank you very much for inviting me and UNDRR here. So I'd like to start saying that UNDRR has the mandate to implement the Sendai framework. And Sendai framework has 4 pillars. So the first one is understand risk. And for that, you can make decisions that are risk informed. The second one is regarding governance. So to work on policies, to create frameworks. The third one is regarding investment in resilience. So I think the insurance industry fits very much on this one. And the third one is about recovery. So preparedness and recovery. And for the G20, so the first ministerial declaration of G20, it was last year under the Brazilian presidents. And something very important happened. So the first pillar of this declaration, it was how can we address social inequality I don't remember exactly the phrase, but we need to address social inequality. So there is no way to not address social inequality because social inequality is a driver for risks. And this is very much based on how we understand that disasters are not natural. Disasters are socioeconomic. So for this second ministerial declaration of G20, insurance came as part of the prearranged finance that UNDRR and all the partners and countries are claimed to support how can we invest in resilience. And there is a very interesting information is that for last year, there is a significant protection gap. So only 344 million of people were covered by insurance across 37 countries. So this represents on 11.5% of the total addressable market of nearly 3 billion people that we have around the world. So UNDRR is working on how can we support countries to create this framework to transfer risks. And but then we have under this, possibilities of finance innovation. We have a very good information that happened today. So today, UNDRR together with CAP launched the resilient bonds. It was $100,000 for a resilience infrastructure. And this is based on the climate bonds resilience taxonomy. So I think it's together with ways of doing insurance, parametric insurance that UNDRR is pushing a lot. It's a way to create resilience, to help to finance resilience. So this is the big problem. How can we collectively finance resilience?
Okay. Well, you mentioned about people, right? And we cannot forget that when we are discussing bioeconomy here in Brazil, we are putting people in front of it because that could be a economic solution for our people of forest. And now I would like to come back to Jorge, who launched the study on bioeconomy. And I would like you to mention the challenge. So let's go to the challenge section. So tell us what this study that the people here could download now it's stating, and what are your suggestions to overcome these challenges?
Thank you, Luca. And I don't want to be remiss, I forgot to mention a very important piece of that study is that the study was made in collaboration with ICS, with the Institute for Climate and Society, and with CNseg. So, and of course with Marsh. So we've done, it's a whole spectrum of factors across the board that we've been working this year early on. And so yeah, I forgot to mention that before. That was probably the most important part of the report, that collaboration. Now on the challenges, first, data. So in the bioeconomy sector, forests as well, but particularly in the bioeconomy, the lack of data in Brazil, the level of granularity and the ecosystem data is lacking to a point in which you can then go to what Frederick was saying in terms of, whether you can understand and quantify the risk and hence then be able to, accompany the investment all throughout the process. That's a big one. The second is that the level of activities that you can do, the level of understanding of the activities and interconnectedness of the activities that could be done to reduce the risk around bioeconomy and forest conservation and forest management, it's still lacking. Agroforestry, Regen Ag, fire smart land management, early warning systems, restoration, all those elements are things that are not interconnected when you're doing a business, and the lack of understanding of how to do that, and hence what's the value of those risk reduction elements, activities, to eventually make insurance more affordable and effective, is still a pending issue. Third is, and this is a bit more, the next generation of thinking about insurance for these kind of new fields, new financial fields or economic fields, is how do you can link premiums and payouts to positive practices, and whether that creates an incentive for resilience and sustainability practices early on in the project, and whether insurance could actually make that happen in this field. It happens in our fields for sure, but it's a systemic issue that insurance companies might want to look into. And finally, using existing infrastructure, social infrastructure, or even just community infrastructure to make sure that that these mechanisms that you're putting out will be responsive to what the communities need. So, for example, using cooperatives or producer associations as part of the equation on delivering both the practices but also the payouts as needed when it happens. Adopting parametric triggers that are understood by communities. Developing early warning systems that are attuned to the reality of those communities that are consuming that information. And just, and finally, linking coverage to social protection programs. So you create a continuum from whatever happens and whether that policy cannot cover 100% of that loss, being that on labor productivity for a heat wave or just, a disaster that, crashes the whole project itself. There needs to be a continuum of risk transfer mechanisms, and insurance should be looking into how they can complement those others broadly, and how to bring actors to the table. One of the main capabilities of insurance companies is stakeholder engagement and the capacity to actually see the whole package, and whether they cannot cover all of it, which is a reality, then how to bring other actors to the table, being that via risk reduction, as I was saying, or just social protection services at the other end of the spectrum. So again, thanks again for the opportunity to share these results, and the collaboration with Marsh, CNseg, and IX this year has been amazing.
Thank you. Well, you mentioned about the data, and Swencha, I would like if you can comment on this, because this we know that have been discussed a lot here in COP, and I know that you have an experience on some suggestions or even the challenge, or to complement the challenge on the data. And perhaps after your comment, Frederick, I would like to invite you, because some of these challenges you are already addressing in the Carbon Pool platform. So it would be a great moment to explain in full what and how you overcome this challenge. Swenja.
Yeah, I mean, clearly data is important for everything. I think we're getting better. There's more data, and technology can play a big role. But I want to go one step back, because I think when we're saying nature, insurance, bioeconomy, and insurance, there are a lot of things that insurance can do that are actually very common to like project management. And I think it helps, similar to when you look at the transition, to just kind of look at what are the risks. And for a lot of risks, actually, there are existing solutions, and they are not very different. It's kind of like a project. Projects are often very, from generation all the way to decommissioning. So I think that's an important step, because if we start with a difficult one, the unique nature elements, the quantification and so on, there is a lot of practical stuff that we can do in the first place, and that we're already doing. And environmental liability insurance has been looking at, regenerating, wetlands and paying for that, for decades. So there's a lot of expertise that exists that we can bring to this. I think the challenge is often when you then look specifically at, the value of, sort of nature-based solutions or biodiversity, is that we're trying to integrate that into our way of assessing and quantifying and monetizing it. And I think this is where I think there are still some challenges. And where when you, for example, sit down with someone who has a scientific background, who really understands ecosystems, often they really, really struggle understanding the language of someone who comes from an infrastructure investment or insurance background. And I think that is still a really big barrier, is kind of breaking it down and then sort of, yeah, disentangling, because, you know, ecosystems are hugely complex. But we've seen this in the UK, where we have biodiversity net gain as a new regulation, and that imposes on property developers to actually ensure for 40 years that for every new development they do, they create positive biodiversity net gains, either on site or somewhere off-site or through some credits. And by doing that, by creating, it's sort of this regulation suddenly has brought together insurers, developers, and those who've designed the regulation and who actually understand, you know, biodiversity, to speak a common language. And I think that's a really powerful example. And I think if we do that, then some of these really great ideas that we've heard here or that we've seen in practice, you know, they can be easily scaled up. But I think that's often missing.
Thank you. Frederick?
Before I delve into the fascinating world of data and actuarial modeling, I want to bring the problem into the day-to-day and its practical implications. Here in Brazil, you have project developers that are restoring nature that are celebrated the world over. Regreen won the Earthshot Prize a couple of days ago. Mombach is featured in Time as one of the Time 100 people who are really at the forefront of combating climate change. And they're able to raise hundreds of millions of dollars all over the world to plant trees and restore ecosystems here in Brazil. Yet, with all of these accolades, they're not able to access bank financing from local banks, from the local development bank, all of which actually want to help and be a part of that growth. BNDES has a 1 billion reais facility that is supposed to be deployed into restoring nature. It is accessible at an interest rate of 3.5%, which is in reais almost free money. But today, even these blue chip developers that are recognized throughout the world are unable to actually access that financing in any meaningful way. And the reason for that is that any bank that looks at this, that looks at restoring nature, they just struggle with the physical risk of, well, will this project be successful? Will the trees grow? What happens if there's a massive fire? These are not things that banks are used to assessing. And these are also not risks that banks want to retain on their balance sheets. And that is where we insurers come in. And when we come in with a bit of imagination, which we can develop, we will see that there's so many parallels to things we already do. Trees are living organisms. We already insure crops. Very similar modeling behind it. We do not have years of claims data when it comes to restoring nature, but we do understand how living things grow. And we do have access to weather, at this point, due to satellites and remote sensing, pretty granular data, even in the most remote areas of the Amazon. And when you put these things together, when you bring teams together that come from data science, that come maybe from climate modeling, and you put that together with underwriters, actuaries that want to move forwards, you can actually overcome some of the data challenges. You can overcome a lot of the modeling challenges. It is actually more a question of will and creativity. and using many of the things that we as an industry have actually already developed, just altering them a bit and using new technologies, new data that is available where it's needed.
Thank you. Thank you. So coming from the more public and infrastructure side of the room, maybe Rachel and Adriana, would you like to also share the challenges perspective from the sectors that you both are overseeing in your institutions?
Yes, I would. I think what would be quite helpful is to talk about how within the Insurance Development Forum, we try and help overcome the issues of data and modeling in terms of how that then allows us to expand the footprint of insurance. So one of the key groups working groups within this institution is it's called the Risk Modeling Working Group, because if you want to expand insurance in territories and geographies where it doesn't exist, it's very difficult if you don't have much assessment of the risk. As I think somebody mentioned, insurers are quite sort of conservative beings. They want to look back at data. And if they can't, and sort of any data is better than no data, right? So you have to put quite a lot of effort into. There is not much modeling going on in territories other than Europe, the US, Australia, etc. So this risk modeling group, and one of the key things it's done is set up something called the Global Risk Modeling Alliance. And the Global Risk Modeling Alliance, which is significantly funded by the German government, it's basically it serves the V20. So the members of it are the vulnerable 20, which is actually a group of about 40 odd. So it's then how can we get that group comfortable with risk modeling? And one of the ways that it's doing that is not only introducing them to the tools that we in the sort of Western insurance world are quite used to using, but it's also building the capacity. So capacity building is one of the kind of strategic aims of the IDF, and building that capacity there, but also building the tools. So, and these tools are free to use. So I work with these guys that are super sophisticated building these. There's a global exposure model, which literally models so much of the world, something like 97% of the world, that can be free to use. Or they've also created a parametric index. It shows you, it's an index of all the parametric tools. So it sort of helps try to sort of translate what is really not commonplace language or techniques to some of these areas. So that's what the risk modeling, and it just to sort of bring to life what that can mean in terms of a transaction. So one of the projects that the Insurance Development Forum has acted on is it's a insurance solution for a parametric insurance solution for Mexico, who had apparently 80% of their weather-related economic losses come from agriculture. So what this does is it's an insurance contract that's triggered on precipitation and drought, and those are the metrics then. And this has helped serve and protect the livelihood of 30,000 smallholders. So, but if you don't have the data and the modelling, it's quite difficult to do that work. So we're quite proud in the IDF of the work that's done on risk modelling, and that also goes to help infrastructure. So back to the capital markets, who now look to the insurers. We've had these CAP models for quite a long time, but the capital markets now are realising quite how important this is. Not only if they're trying to assess the risk of them financing a building in a certain jurisdiction, they've got to think about that. The vulnerabilities of that building, but also the surrounding sort of roads and everything for the next 20 or 30 years hence. So our familiarity and our expertise with these CAP modeling tools, I think, is really sort of upped in profile and relevance in the broader financial markets.
Yeah, on the data debate as well, something that we should discuss, and we saw that in the Ministry of Finance report that was launched before COP as well, is how we can streamline all data that is available, right? So how we can create a global platform that can receive the granular data from cities, neighborhoods that we mentioned here, with the global data that IMF has, for instance, and how this data can be used by cities, but also global investors when they are assessing a transaction in a developing country that has a high exposure of natural disasters. So this is something that we still have some room for innovation But just before moving to our audience to ask some questions, and I know that there are two people here that would like to pose some questions, I would like also to hear Adriana.
Thank you. I'd like to go back on colleagues' comments in 2 points. First, remember that saying that we need to save for the rain. So it's raining now. We need to start acting really now, not in 10 years, not in 20 years. And regarding to risk models that you mentioned, so UNDRR is now pushing a lot for probabilistic model. So it's not enough. We do our planning based on historical data. So we need to incorporate climate risk, the unknown, so other hazards to understand how can we be prepared for the future. And this is very important for building resilience infrastructure. So and there is another thing. It's not such a thing as infrastructure per se. Now we really need to think on resilient infrastructure. And Luca, you mentioned about the platforms. So here in Brazil, there are some platforms. Here in Brazil, we have a good platform that is Adapta Brasil, very good for cities. Also CDRR, which is the Coalition for Disaster Infrastructure Resilience, has a platform called GIRI. And UNDRR launched a platform on loss and damage named Delta. So it is Inventar that you guys probably know about this, but so now it's the new version, it's Delta. And I'd like to comment in another thing regarding something that Senior mentioned regarding nature-based solution, adaptation. So we really need to integrate everything. Everything that we do for climate adaptation, we are doing to reduce risk as well. Also, we need to connect this with biodiversity. So everything is connected. It reminds me a song that some Brazilian might know from Titãs, Tudo ao mesmo tempo agora, everything at the same time now. So I think this is the way to do. But can I give some good news? So UNDRR with WFP and UNEP, we are working in Amazon cities in Brazil, Bolivia, Peru, and Colombia on parametrics insurance for food security and DRR. So we are first organizing, we just launched a methodology yesterday. So how can cities can connect DRR with food security? We have reduced a lot mortality with early warning for all, but we're still losing means of life. So with this parametric insurance, the project, we intend to scale this up in many other Amazon cities. And I think this is a way to do some pre-arranged finance.
Thank you. With Titãs, I will open the floor. Oh, we have one more comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back on this preparedness and dealing with an issue before it causes difficulties or losses or damages. A couple of years ago, I did some research and trying to understand how much money was spent globally on climate risk. Really having to turn that around. And I think there are some promising signs, but we are inherently reactive as human beings, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's the magic number. For each dollar you invest in adaptation, you have 8 to 9 in returns on avoided losses, right? So why we're not doing this? I would like to open the floor. Do we have any question to our distinguished speakers here? Oh, we have one and another. Why? I knew that it was two questions. How come? Can we?
Thank you for a very interesting panel. Since we're talking about innovative insurance, I would like to ask you to explore maybe some type of products that are not common at all. Insurance over natural assets. There are certain examples. Usually TNC was involved with AXA, Swiss Re, Munich Re, insurance over mangroves and coral reefs. In the case of mangroves, for example, they both capture more carbon, 4 times more carbon than tropical forests. They reduce 50% the impact of extreme weather events in the coast, and they are important for biodiversity. So it makes a lot of sense to insure them. This pilot insurance proved economically feasible. So I'd like to hear you about it.
Thank you. Maybe we can take the final one, the other question. Alia. Será que você consegue levar o microfone ali?
Can you please take the microphone to the person who wants to ask a question? Thank you.
Everyone, so rich panel. Thank you. Congratulations. I'm Thiago Lang. I'm from AM Brazil. Everything that you mentioned, because those are challenges that we every day see, both carbon, nature-based solutions, infra. Understand that for create innovative solutions, we actually need to receive the feedbacks of our clients about their needs, about their pains. And we should, as insurance market, be involved since the beginning of any decision making to help on that decision making. But sometimes we don't see that. So my question is whether or not you see clients coming to you since the beginning of a project, bringing their needs, and when they do that? Corporate clients, those new clients that we're talking about, carbon and other ones, and financial institutions, for example.
Thank you, Thiago. Who wants to take these two questions? You can select. Do you have the microphone?
I've just spoken, but so I give you first. Shall I? Okay. Well, as an insurance broker, we would not be doing our job if we don't listen to our clients and what they need. So, I mean, you're absolutely right. You know, what we usually say is don't start your discussion with the insurance question, start with the risk question. What are the risk challenges? And there's a lot of education in this involved because some of these risks are not really yet on a client radar, or they haven't really understood. I mean, supply chain risk is one example. Or if you are talking to a city, you know, starting with assessing and identifying the risk. And I think only then can you move to this question of, okay, how much of that can you deal with by just changing the way you operate or changing the way you have certain policies in your cities? You kind of do this by risk layering and breaking it down. And then at some point you come to the insurance question, but there are lots of steps before that. And I think that's a real good way of making sure that you are actually addressing the individual needs. But clearly there are lots of groups that are outside of, you know, what the insurance industry is considered as being their sort of target clients. And I think this is important, and that's where the work of IDF is so important, to actually have sort of inclusive insurance solutions. And I think technology can help a lot in terms of, you know, sort of making things affordable also to farmers who have actually usually no access to insurance, like parametric solutions. But I think it needs to be risk and needs based. unfortunately, there have been products that have been missold. And then people lose interest, and rightly so. And I could give you a list of countries where a lot of effort had been put into developing some really cool solutions, and then people don't get the payout that they expected because it was for the wrong type of crop. Or, I mean, there can be lots of challenges. So we as a sector really need to work hard to keep it transparent so that these products actually really work.
Thank you.
If I think that there's the coral reef is probably the good example. I think that there's one other example. I think it's El Salvador, but somebody insured the surf. So they ensured that the particular town was entirely dependent on this great surf, and they for the tourism, etc. And they insured that. But I think, and there's a quite a well-known one in the Caribbean where it's a sort of group of Caribbean countries that have insured against the reef. But it's quite often governments doing that, or locally. So because the problem is who owns the asset. The problem is who owns the asset, and who then how is that valued? There is an example, I think, of a hotel company sponsoring or going behind the insurance of a coral reef because clearly they want the beaches in good condition, etc. But I think that's probably where data will help. So as we start to get better data, not only from a carbon perspective, but from a biodiversity. So if we start to get better data, I think that will help. So the carbon markets are quite useful in that way because that should help us get a better valuation of what, even if it's sort of not, if it's slightly differently linked, valuation on nature. And then it's who has to have some ownership of that. And I think the fundamental problem at the moment is that there is no, there's private finance does not own the risk, even if it's sort of ultimately impacting them, they don't own it.
A disclaimer, I used to work at the Nature Conservancy for 11 years. I was involved on the Mesoamerican Reef device for the parametric insurance for coral reefs in the Yucatan Peninsula. And just a personal story, I was able also to go to that ocean and submerge and see how communities were restoring coral reefs with a payout from that parametric. And the realization is that, and this goes back to my first point, when you look at the insurance needs to be part of a continuum of a financial ecosystem that allows for an investments to actually be commensurate to the need. Why I say this? In that particular case, the owner of the policy was the state of Yucatan, the state of Quintana Roo, sorry. And they issued a policy with some public money. They had some additional resources coming from philanthropy or just grants. But the amount of the policy, because they couldn't sort of afford more than that, the payout was, when it happened, it covered about 5% of all the coral reef area that was supposed to be protected. So, you have a very interesting and innovative product, but it's useless. So the fact that you can, as an insurance, you can, for example, start measuring the risk and the benefits of coral reefs vis-a-vis hard infrastructure that could be built by the hotel industry in that same area of the Yucatan Peninsula, and where you can show black or red or blue on what would be most cost effective, and hence where insurance actually could support the concept that those businesses are the ones that probably should be investing on some of those costs and paying for those policies to a certain degree. Or how you see insurance as a way in which you understand how you can incentivize actions of communities that will be the ones that are the protectors of those coral reefs, and that would be benefiting if the payouts were commensurate to the needs of those communities, and how you engage communities and the hotel industry, and hence also the financial ecosystem, including insurance. So I think insurance plays a role. Again, one of the capabilities of insurance companies is that they are really great strategic stakeholder engagement, that they can understand that and see the continuum, and then bring to the table everybody. I see your point in terms of how government and private sector cannot talk that much sentence or are not aligned, but that's exactly the challenge that we're faced with. We need to see a comprehensive approach and how risk transfer mechanisms actually are managed, and how you manage the risk, the sharing of risk across a continuum. and who pays public, who pays private, and how you come together. So just a reflection of a personal story, basically because I went under the ocean and saw the damage and the huge opportunity.
Thank you, Jorge. We have 2 minutes. Final, very, very brief and fast question. Let's pretend that I have a superpower. I have this paper here, and I will just give this paper to André Corrêa do Lago as the COP presidency. And he will receive, and this paper will be the COP decision. What can we suggest in terms of insurance? What would you like to see in the COP decision related to the insurance as a solution to all the challenge that we discuss here? Who will take first?
That's an easy one. So thank you for teeing it up so nicely. My wish to the COP president in terms of bringing insurance into solving climate would be to actually use the power of insurance to back one of the most important mechanisms we have, which are carbon markets. And the most elegant way of bringing in insurance would actually be to make insurance mandatory, like we do for third-party liability for carbon claims and for carbon credits. That would solve a lot of issues and would actually bring us as an industry to the forefront and at the center of solving the climate crisis, contributing what we know how to do.
Thank you. Who else?
Okay, I'm gonna start with some information that's not that good. So we all heard about the Melissa hurricane and the devastation that happened in Jamaica. So it seems that we don't have enough data, at least we didn't get the entire data so far, but it seems that the loss, it's almost 8 or 9% of the Jamaica GDP from last year. So it is a lot. Our understanding is that governments cannot fund all this resilient work. So this is a work for the private sector as well. So what we think would be excellent if you can connect climate adaptation with DRR, disaster risk reduction, and have all sectors involved to fund it, to finance it.
I've got a sort of different point, but I absolutely would like to get sent to the COP presidency. I think all these really constructive private finance, disaster risk related conversations, can they get a stronger voice externally where there's so much good constructive business and deals going on, etc., that can be, and they can be help scaled by somehow that noise has to penetrate further into the kind of the meeting rooms of the Blue Zone, not just the pavilions, and externally to the press. We hear so much negative news, like, is COP worthwhile because the US and China and Russia aren't there? There are tons of Americans here. There are tons, the Chinese have got a massive pavilion. So we just need these real deal solutions where what's actually happening to have a much, much louder voice.
Okay, well, what I want the COP presidency to take away, and indeed all our national governments, is how big the problem is, and insurers have been really at the forefront of reminding the world how important it is. So that's the first thing. But then that it is feasible. And actually, we see a lot of progress despite policy, because policies are not in the right way. So I think insurance sector can actually show what is feasible and what is possible, and also remind governments that we need a certainty, we need a direction of travel. If that can come out of COP, I think we get really good progress.
Thank you. Jorge? Okay. With these inspiring words, we will conclude this panel. Thank you, and thank you as well.
Agradeço a todos vocês pela participação em
Okay, I
mais
thank you
painel
all
tão
for your
enriquecedor.
participation in such an
Encerramos
enriching
agora a
panel.
programação do
We
Diálogo
will finish
COP30,
our programs,
Seguro,
dialogues,
Clima e Natureza,
COP30,
fórum
Insurance,
organizado pela
Climate and Nature, a
CNseg
forum
e
organized by
Instituto Clima e
CNseg and
Sociedade.
ICS, Institute
E para
Climate
finalizar
and
o dia,
Society. And
gostaria de
to
convidar
end the
ao
day,
palco os
I'd like to
representantes
invite
da
onto the
Seguros
stage
Unimed
the
para o breve anúncio
representatives
da
from
parceria que acabam de
Seguros
firmar para a
Unimed,
compensação de
so that
carbono.
they can announce the partnerships that they have just
Convido ao palco
agreed on for decarbonization.
Neumar Arbex,
I invite
Head
Neumar
de
Arbex,
ESG para
Head
as
of
Américas da
ESG for
KPMG.
Americas from KPMG. Tauden Farias, Chief Legal Officer from 6Bios. Jorge Veloso, Superintendent of Biodiversitas Foundation. Pedro Nabuco, Executive Director of Strategy and Management from Unimed Seguros, Unimed Insurance Company.
E Dr. Elton Freitas,
And
presidente.
Dr. Elton Freitas, President of Unimed Seguros, Unimed Insurance. Good afternoon, my dear friends. I am here to announce something that I consider very important and very relevant, especially in this moment that we are going through. I would like to thank very much CNseg for the opportunity of having this moment, this space, this relevant event. And I would like to highlight some supports, Diogo, Gustavo, Bruno, Carla Simões, who have made it possible for us to be here now. I would also like to emphasize the importance that it is to announce this in this international relevant event. But above all, for Brazil, Brazil has a set of initiatives that need to be better presented for the world, to the world public. So it is a good environment, a great environment for such an announcement. I would like to say as well that I am honored. Unimed Insurance is honored to be part of this project, which is a pioneer one. We are an insurance sector which is specialized in identifying risks, measuring these risks, and classifying them. But I understand that there is something which is more relevant, an emergency, which is the climate one, the risks called environmental risks, which we need to think about how we can help with that. So this is what we are going to talk about. With that spirit, I would like to present something that is relevant, which is the program for the sponsorship of the monitoring of private reserves of the natural heritage of PPM, because it is an initiative that can be replicated everywhere in the country. We have RPPM's policies, we have a law, so it is a strategy to motivate the creation of new ones through monetization of these reserves, these private reserves of natural heritage. So Unimed Insurance is announcing the compensation of 500 tons annually of carbon through the sponsorships of RPPMs as a pioneer initiative together with 6Bios and the monitoring also from HPMG. So I would like to say that this initiative is aligned with what Unimed Insurance does, which is a cooperative that has a principle, which is cooperativism, concerned with the community, and Unimed Insurance, together with Biodiversas, has sponsored the reserves. But now we are quantifying it And we are doing another sponsorship with the objective of, as of now, definitely compensate our carbon reserve. And that's why we are very glad to be here in this event announcing that to you. Hello. Okay, on behalf of Biodiversas, we would like to say that we are very satisfied. Biodiversas Foundation is a Brazilian institution, more than 37 years old, that acts on private preservation of species. And along this trajectory, we have helped create more than 100 RPPM. So this is a moment in which we are materializing the sustainability of these reserves. So it is a true gratitude to 6BU, to KPMG, all partners involved here. Even though it's not such a robust announcement, we believe that it's just the beginning of a journey. The targets of this program are very ambitious. We are talking about 150,000 hectares of protected areas in 2026, and with a target of reaching 5 million until 2030. So I thank Unimed for the trust. You have been our partner for very long, and once again, you are betting on biodiversity, Brazilian biodiversity, understanding that protecting biodiversity is protecting people, and looking after nature, the nature is looking after the health of people. It's much more than just making ambulances available. It is to make nature and biodiversity available so that people won't get ill. So we are truly glad and proud of this partnership. And we are truly glad to be able to announce solutions which will help to keep, or at least to minimize, this extinction period that we are going through. It is a Brazilian solution with Brazilian technology and initially with the sponsorship of Brazilian companies. This makes us really proud. So we thank Unimed, Seguros Unimed, Unimed Insurance Companies, and congratulate 6BUs for the innovation, for the entrepreneurship, and the novelty of this action. We are announcing here something that doesn't exist anywhere in the world, private initiative, placing resources and collecting part of these resources in carbon, but sponsors for RPPMs that is materialized now is much bigger than just the purchase of carbon. Carbon gets seen as a little compensation. Maybe if you would buy it in the carbon capital, it would represent 20% of what they will receive. But with this resource, the RPPMs will be able to protect biodiversity, protect lives, and guarantee better quality of life to all of us. So congratulations. I am really proud that Biodiversas is participating this moment here, to thank Pedro Brusa, Susan from Hotspot PA, and so on. Many partners who are here with us and could not be here with us, but are anyway. So we are looking at the future with optimism. This won't be an initiative that on itself alone will solve all the problems, but I think the solution of problems, climate problems, is a set of initiatives that will solve. So we are proud of being part of one of them, showing a more sustainable way. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Talden Faria. I am a lawyer, and I am extremely happy due to this partnership that helps us face the climate crisis, that it is also an economic crisis, a social one, an environmental one. And so this project from 6BUs, it started in a research by Professor Guido Lemes at a federal university. Then we had other universities coming in and private universities as well. foreign universities engaged as well, and built a great platform, interdisciplinary one, that aligns the question of environmental protection, the legal issues as well, and the use of satellites, technology, programs, the use of the blockchain system to certify that the great issue that these data are coherent, that they are safe data with regards to that carbon credit, with regards to the protection of that area. We are talking about the RPPM, which is a Brazilian invention, which is a system for the preservation of areas in Brazil that best works here. And our intention is to guarantee a contribution, a further help to the RPPMs in Brazil so that they become more and more effective and that they may scale as well. 6 billions, in 6 billions, it's a great happiness. It is actually seeing a dream come true with Brazilian technology in a completely safe way. So once again, thank you, Unimed Seguros. I'm available here at your disposal. Thank you. Good evening. I think we can now say good evening because it is evening here. My name is Neumara. I am a leader partner for KPMG, Brazil and Americas. I look at projects related to sustainability in the different sectors of the economy. So I'll start congratulating Unimed, Biodiversitas and 6 Bios for the alliance, for the project, but mostly I'd like to highlight that the fact that KPMG is here today, it's because there is something really innovative in what's happening here. I see these men talking here so modestly, but what's happening here is a very special moment. It's one of the great difficulties for companies like KPMG when we are going to discuss with clients and credit providers, carbon credit providers or biodiverse credits. We will soon be talking about that, or protection of important areas which will be necessary for us to be able to stabilize climate. One of the great challenges is how we're going to monitor this. And not just monitor if this is actually being preserved, but also monitor it in a way that is robust so that the data that comes out is high quality. And what we can see here today, this is how we started talking about it through 6 Bios. This is a Brazilian solution. It's a network of scientists with a number of executives and other professionals who are the best ones in their areas to develop a methodology of measurement of high quality to be able to help Brazilians, owners of these areas, how we can monetize this protection. How can we have the resource of those who are interested in protection, as we can see now with Unimed Seguros, how can we get that resource? How can we get that resource to those who are actually protecting the environment, doing many things which are necessary besides the daily monitoring? So we got into this talk with 6 Bios because of the relevance of having a Brazilian initiative to be able to solve this problem, which is so serious. So 6 Bios is a great news in the market. Many technologies and solutions and platforms use satellite images, none of which can do the combination that 6 Bios does, not just reading this data, but also interpreting them with your own algorithms. So these started a conversation to understand how Biodiversitas, our first real experiment, right, of this partnership was doing and how they could be monetized. So to get this resource to reach who needs them, and Unimed wanting to innovate as well in the insurance area. I think this is a phenomenal step that you have taken. It's a giant step. And to say that KPMG is here today to honor this space that has been created here and offer our specialty to understand how we can bring more robustness to all these measures and all these processes which are behind an operation such as this one. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Okay, so I will wrap up. Thank you all for your presence. That's it. Technology, science, governance, monitoring, and collaboration. I think fundamentally this is what we are talking about, a collaborative project. And let's go ahead. Seguros Unimed will be doing all this movement together. And we have the interest that this may proliferate, may be widespread to other organizations, people, small companies, great corporations, that they can see this experience and think, I can do that as well. And so here we are. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Thank you. Thank you, Neomara, Talden Jorge, Elton Freitas, and Pedro Nabuco, Executive Director of Strategic Direction from Unimed. Please, let's give them a round of applause. Okay, today we've had an afternoon filled with enriching content. Thank you very much for being here with us. I would also like to thank once again our empowerers, Allianz, AXA, BD Insurance, Bradesco, Caixa Seguridade, Mafre, Marsh McLennan, Porto, Prudential, and Tokyo Marine. Just a reminder, all lectures will be available on our channel on YouTube. I invite you all to the cocktail that starts now. Have an excellent evening.